All good? Good evening and welcome to the February 11th, 2025 meeting of the East Long Meadow Town Council. I'll call the meeting to order and ask that we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I would ask that we take a brief moment of silence to reflect on the events, both near and afar. Thank you. In accordance with Mass General Law, this meeting is being recorded by LCAT. If there's anyone else in the audience, if you could identify yourself.
Sarah Hainan in Reminder Publishing.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, next we have public comments. First, we have Lena signed up. If you want to come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Lena Velturo and I live at 112 Brayburn Road. And I'm here on behalf of the East Long Meadow veterans. And if it's okay, if anybody's a veteran, can you please raise your hand? So the town of East Long Meadow does have a voice and they do have veterans that are willing to advocate. As I stated, my name is Lena Velturo. I reside at 112 Brayburn Road. As a retired U.S. Army veteran, I sit before you today with a heartfelt request on behalf of our East Long Meadow disabled veterans and their families. The HERO Act enacted into law on August 8th, 2024 provided a crucial opportunity for municipalities to enhance the property tax abatement program for VA qualified service-connected veterans, surviving spouses, and Gold Star families. For many years, various veteran organizations have advocated for these essential upgrades. Specifically, I am requesting the approval of Clause 22I and 22J of the HERO Act. 100% increase in a yearly cost of living adjustment. These upgrades are not merely beneficial, they are necessary to honor the sacrifices made by our veterans and their families. By passing these options, we can ensure that our brave men and women who served our country, as well as their families, receive the support and recognition they rightfully deserve. Thank you for your time and consideration. I urge you to approve Clause 22I and 22J of the HERO Act and making a meaningful difference in the lives of our veterans and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. On that front, thank you for the comments, and that is definitely something we'll look into. I know that process has to start with the Board of Assessors first to
My understanding, it's already had its blessing from the Board of Assessors, to my best of my knowledge.
And we'll have to receive that officially communicated to us to the council level, and then we can look at that through the budget process this upcoming year, and then we'll look at taking action on that.
Okay, so how long do you think that process will take? I mean, if we're being honest here, if this doesn't pass, my plan is to appeal it, and it has to be all done by July 1st.
I'm not sure what the timetable is at the moment. It definitely would be before July or June.
Right, but I need the time to appeal it. If you guys don't go for the 100% with the COLA increase, I will be appealing it and doing a citizen's petition. So I need the time to do that because a decision has to be made by July 1st. So if we could get it done in a timely fashion, that's all I'm asking.
So can I suggest at our
Sure.
meeting in March that we put this on? We will reach out to the assessors and find out what we're looking at as far as the
Projections and whatnot.
projections and all, and see if we can get it done.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Action item.
Okay, next we have Joe regarding fireworks.
Hi,
Hi. State your name and address for the record as well.
Joe Abdel, 314 Elm Street.
Thank you.
No worse.
Well, I think we-
That is a bear. This is a bear trap. This is been going on for years. It's a quality of life issue in this town. I've been here for 28 years, and the use of fireworks, and I'm sure you guys have heard it over and over. It's just absolutely out of control. It starts where I am up in Elm Street. It starts a week or two before the 4th. It goes through the 4th and then sometimes days after. And everybody will call the police. I've called the police at least the last 10 years in a row. And they go up and they leave. And the next day it's the same thing going on. I took the time, went online and read what the state put in place. And it's absolutely a waste of time. They should erase it. There's no teeth in that whatsoever. The police are to, first of all, fireworks are illegal in the state. The police are to confiscate the fireworks, retain them, and then take them to the state police for disposal. Well, I'm not sure that happens because it just keeps happening over with the same people. Some people up where I live, they have businesses and they can afford hundreds of dollars worth of these things. And I'm not talking little fireworks and skyrockets. I'm 6 or 8 houses down from where this happens, and literally the house shakes with a boom. You've got seniors, you've got veterans, you've got people with children, you've got pets. And this starts at dark and it goes till sometimes 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And what happens when one person starts the fireworks, it's something about it's a primitive reflex. Some guy over here says he's going to get fireworks. And they all kind of, and the third guy starts. So it's so far out of control. We have to do something about it. I can sit here and complain about it. I don't know, wouldn't know what else to do. I think the police have to be able to write a ticket to the property owner. If they're gone for the weekend and the kids are doing it, the ticket still goes to the property owner. It's got to be $50 or $75 charge. And then they should be responsible for the cost of disposal. The police car has to take this and bring it to the East Long Meadow, and on Monday or Tuesday, then bring it to the state police. That's $200. It's a fine plus $200. I mean, it only makes sense. We're talking about doing the right thing here. Second offense, maybe $300, whatever it may be, but it's just the state law. There's no teeth in it whatsoever. I'm sure many of you have read it. If you haven't, it's interesting reading. It's kind of what the state of Massachusetts did with cell phones. Same thing. So it's the noise up there is out of control. The fireworks was one topic I explained to the lady, but engine brakes, same thing. We're dealing with engine brakes all the time. They're going down the road and it's loud roar all hours of the day and night. Dump trucks, dirt bikes over there, same thing. We have roosters in the neighborhood. They go all hours of the day. Speeders. I mean, I can go on and on and on. I'm on Elm Street. Most of you people live on a nice little side street. I'm envious. I'm very envious. But this is just out of control. You guys really have to put your foot down and do something about these areas. What else can I say? Thank you for your time.
you.
Again, it's a quality of control.
Your address again, sir? Sorry.
14 Elm.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a public comment this evening? You could just state your name and address for the record.
Ross Levine, 72 Baymore Drive.
Great.
Just want to express my concern over the center district, and I don't even understand it fully, but I understand enough of it, and I don't understand why the only benefit I see to the town is getting a very small amount relative to our budget and whatnot that we're going to get from the state. And in return, we give up a lot of control as to what we can do in there. And the part that really concerns me is this Chapter 40R, which I understand maybe we have to do, maybe we don't have to do. But it says it seeks to substantially increase the supply of housing and decrease its cost by increasing the amount of land zoned for dense housing. Smart Growth Zoning Overlay Act, Chapter 149, Acts of 2004. Chapter, the Act encourages communities to create dense residential or mixed-use smart growth zoning districts, including a high percentage of affordable housing units to be located near transit stations in the areas of concentrated development, such as existing city and town centers, and in highly suitable locations. I'm not sure why we all know we have issues with the Rotary, with the traffic and whatnot. I'm not sure why we're looking to put more people and businesses into those areas and drive it into a Rotary that's already very hard to navigate. I really don't see the benefit of this, that we have a perfectly capable planning board that anything we want to do, we can do for ourselves. So, I would say that, East Long Meadow knows what's best for East Long Meadow. So that's it.
Great. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to make a public comment?
Can I stand? Is that okay?
Sure.
Alessio, I'm a resident of East Long Meadow, 2 Forbes Hill Road. I'm here also on the 40R Center District plan. I think it's just to give you my background. I've been a resident of town for a long, long time. I worked for the town for a long, long time, as most of you all know. I've seen a lot of changes, and I'm not here to say that change is bad. I understand change is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's how we control that change is what's important and how it affects us. So we have this new district outlay, which I think is a good idea overall. I think it's going to bring a lot of flexibility to the town as it grows, which we need the flexibility. But we don't need any, I'm going to echo some of the comments earlier that just were made by the previous speaker, that we don't need anybody else pretty much telling us how to grow our town. We know our town the best. We know what's good for the town. Yeah, the state might get involved if you let them. They might think, wiggle a carrot in front of you with a few dollars, and then you're going to be hand tied to them to do what they want to do. I don't think that's in the best interest of what we want to do. Okay, they're going to have minimum standards, I understand, right? So standards are standards. If they change down the road, how do we control that? I think we can avoid all that and understand that we should take control of our town and grow the way we want to grow. Change is going to happen. I conceded that a long time ago. Nothing stays the same, back to life. But I have seen a big change in town. And hopefully the changes we make will make it a lot easier on everybody to get along with. I think we should control our own destiny. And I have the faith in you guys to do the right thing because we elected you, and versus somebody from the state telling us how to operate in our town. So I hope you take that in consideration moving forward, and understand that, you know, some of the overlay right now with the industrial part, I understand getting that out of there and putting it into a district area. That's fine. We have industrial gardens out there that they can, you know, operate for those kind of businesses. And this can be a multi-flexible district, which I think is not, you know, it's not bad. It's in the interest. Tom has mentioned that the need for revenues there. This gives you the flexibility to do that. So hopefully you'll control it and make the wise choices for the town moving forward. And it'll look all right when you get done. But I believe you should keep the control in your hands and not somebody else's. It might be a small reward from the state, but at the end of the day, the price is forgotten, the product remains. So what you're dealt with from the state at the end of the day is what you're going to get. And to change that might not be as easy as getting into the game than getting out of the game. So keep it in your hands and develop the town the way you want to develop it with the townspeople in mind. And you allow yourself that flexibility going forward if you do that. That's just my humble opinion. And I'm glad I'm not in charge of the fireworks no more.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to make a public comment?
My name's Roland Bolduc. I live on Smith Avenue in East Long Meadow. I'm also talking about 40R and how I'm opposed to it. When it comes down to safety, it's the reason why I wore this jacket here today. I compete in truck driving championships, and it's all based on safety. It's the longest running safety program in the history of the United States. It's been going on since 1937. Of course, nobody's heard of it, right? But it still goes on. It still happens. You have to drive safe for the year in order to compete. I've been doing it close to 30 years now, and I have a 41-year safe driving career.
Yeah.
Trying to keep that up, keep it going. The one thing I've probably most proud of that it's not on this jacket is I also belong to something called America's Road Team. America's Road Team is a group of professional drivers that have been hand selected to go out and represent the industry throughout the United States. I've sat down with legislators and lawmakers throughout the country, and I've seen the dense populations. They also have an infrastructure of travel. You can get into the locations, you can get out. It's the one thing East Long Meadow is known for that we do not have. We have a 2-lane road that goes through the center of our town. If we're going to make things more dense, we need to go to a 4-lane system through the center of town. It's the only thing that would work. 4 lanes into the rotary would be a nightmare. The nightmare itself is the rotary. But as far as safety is concerned, it's something I've practiced all my life. It's something I'm very familiar with. And man, I'd really hate to see that 40R go through. It's not worth the money for the state to supply us with because we're putting in apartment buildings in the center of town. And creating that dense population is what you'll see in New York. It's what you're going to see in Boston. All of Eastern Massachusetts is doing it. They're so congested. Why do you think they're all moving this way? Because we have some open space. We have a small town of East Long Meadow that continues to grow, and the council does a wonderful job of controlling where they grow, how they grow. You see permits come across your desk and you deal with them at the time. But if the state were to they give us the funds for a 40R, nothing is free. It's going to come down to them telling us how to put in an apartment building where we don't want it. So I am definitely opposed to 40R because I feel the dense population is really going to hurt the safety in this town. And I've seen it happen in other locations. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move to council comments. Any council? Thanks. Is
Thank you.
Thank you.
there any counselor that has?
Through the chair.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to address a comment that was made during the public comment portion of our last council meeting. The commenter attributed my public comments, Centertown District Steering Committee, discussion on adopting the state's concentrated low-income affordable housing law, 40R, to the entire council. I want to clarify the comment was mine. Attribute the statements I make directly as I stand by my comments. You don't need to blanket my colleagues with them. The subject of the town adopting 40R has been a persistent interest of the Centertown District Steering Committee for well over a year now. In fact, my opposition to it prompted me to run for the council. Tonight, I just want to reaffirm my opposition and to address the residents of East Longmeadow directly. I hear you. I firmly oppose the town putting itself in a compromising position by accepting cash payments in exchange for relinquishing local control to Boston bureaucrats. The Centertown Steering Committee's role is to conduct a public process to allow a planner to draft a bylaw that will be submitted to the planning board and ultimately to the town council for approval. The timeline for submitting this draft was set for fall of last year, but it seems to not be on track. Instead, it appears that the process has been hijacked by personal motives and ambitions. Recently, there's been an endless stream of book clubs, author talks, and social events, and social media posts. The facilitator of this is now consumed with running her own campaign to convince residents of East Longmeadow of something they don't want. The steering committee chair who requested the council's silence on the matter, I campaigned extensively on this issue, and the voters of East Longmeadow are aware of my position. I have publicly discussed this matter in council meetings. My duty here is not to remain silent while the process has been allowed to run amok. As a deliberative body, our collective responsibility is to engage in debate, have conversations, and come together to address issues of significance to our town. It is time to move forward and the politicalization of the town's efforts to update the Centertown zoning. For those involved, it is time to listen to what residents, board members, and elected representatives have been saying for well over a year. It's time to move on and to move forward. I appreciate the council president allowing me the time to address this matter. Thank you.
Is there any other counselor that has a comment?
So through the chair.
Sure.
So I had the opportunity to read the good article in the reminder. We made the front page again. I just wanted to point out that book that I kept referring to and looking down at as I was discussing stuff is our zoning bylaws and general bylaws. These are important to me. I helped create a lot of them. I've gone through them. I know them inside out and backwards. And it amazed me being at the Centertown District meeting that we have a slide put up like, what we want for, what non-residential uses don't we want in the Centertown District? And there was no one to speak up to say anything. I don't think anyone knows that we have an entire list of uses from industrial to agricultural to public that are right here. We already have them. We need to go through what we already have and look at it and analyze it to see if the Centertown district would work and what we want in it. But when I pull up a book and I'm looking through it, chances are it's what I call the good book because it's all of our zoning and general bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other counselor? Okay, we will move on to the town manager's report.
Good evening.
Tom?
Hi, everybody. So I've attached, you'll notice the first paragraph is the same every week, every meeting. It's just an update on the school. So the last few weeks of update reports from the project manager for January 20th and the week of the 27th for school and natatorium. So obviously, progress continues to, the project continues to progress very well. Still very much on time and on budget. Steel is flying around, and some roof decking's getting installed, and the foundation walls of the natatorium are now in. So it's really exciting on campus to see the progression of the construction of the building. So Governor Healy filed the Municipal Empowerment Act on January 31st in an effort to provide more control to local municipalities in addressing areas of concern. Bill is based almost entirely on input from municipal officials in addressing areas of concern, local revenue, procurement, tax exemptions, and more. So we've already kind of begun to look through that list. I had attached a sort of a summary of, you got to kind of drill down into into the language a little bit if you want to get into the weeds, but certainly some things that we'll keep an eye on how that bill progresses and some options afforded to us. Fiber to the home project, also moving along. Obviously the design was done. We're sort of in the hands of the utility companies now who are, they got the design in the form of applications to which they are now assessing their system to see how much make-ready work would have to be done in order for us to attach to the poles. And we're still waiting for their input to see what kind of work needs to be done before we can start our construction, which will be sort of the next phase of this. I forwarded the fiber service area map to you today. I apologize. I had asked for it last week, and poor Mr. Quimby's been out sick. So, but everybody's out sick. So we're getting to a point where Whip City will come into one of our future meetings and sort of lay out sort of a marketing plan. And by that, I mean, sort of gauge interest in the community and which of these service areas are, which residents in these service areas are most interested, sort of compare that to how much it would cost to build these areas and sort of come up with a plan to roll this thing out, and sort of a cost analysis and revenue generating matrix to figure out how we're going to roll this thing out. So that'll probably be late March, early April. I think they said that they have most of the website up and ready to roll, and then we can sort of give them input on how we want to go forward. So that's exciting once we get word back from Grid and Verizon. Erin Hastings, the executive director of Westcom, which is our regional dispatch agency. She's been there since Westcom started in late 2018, has resigned to move on to another opportunity. The board of directors currently searching for a temporary interim director to sort of keep the lights on and or run a diagnostic and kind of see where what we do well and some areas for improvement while we search for a long-term solution for that important position. The new communication center for Westcom at Shawinigan Drive in Chicopee, the old Salter College building, that is also under construction as well, making great progress over there. The shell of the building is basically complete. They're moving along inside on HVAC and plumbing and the finishing. and we're looking at getting in that building around May this year, which will be great.
Wow.
The dispatchers currently are in the Chicopee Police Station. There's at any given time probably 12 people working in about 800 square feet. So they're pretty cozy to say the least. So they're excited about moving into the new building. Centertown District Steering Committee met on the 29th of January to begin crafting the bylaw language for the new district. PVPC provided a sort of broad view of topics to include. And we've been, beginning discussion on sort of the general direction of that bylaw. There's another committee meeting on February 19th in which we'll continue writing language for the new law. Upcoming events, just one really before next council meeting, and that's the district meeting on February 19th here at the COA at 6 p.m. I'm here for any questions anybody has any, but that's it for the report.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions?
So through the chair, cost of fiber optics. So before we go into a marketing plan and stuff.
Yep.
Assuming the council will be getting an update as far as what the projected costs are.
Yep.
Because I know when we originally started talking about it to the last time we mentioned the price, it had gone up a lot. And that was quite a few months ago.
Yep.
And I think that's something that the council has to look at, whether or not that the price actually is worth it. Are we going to get enough people? What's the rate of subscribership in order to even cover the cost? And I think those are all questions before we even get into a marketing plan.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a thought process.
Yep.
And I don't know if the rest of the council agrees or not, but.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think we have a sort of an estimated cost, which again would be based on the rate, the take rate, and what revenue we're bringing in while we keep building. Right. The first piece of this is we really need to know how much work we need to do on the existing system.
Right.
Because if that number is astronomical from the utility companies, we might not even have that conversation. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So we're kind of, we're hopeful by Whip City is still planning this rollout and this website and, that can all be done behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, if the price tag's too high,
Exactly.
we might be dead in the water. So we really got to wait to see what the utility companies, that's the last part of the money that's been allocated for this piece is for Whip City to check their work, meaning we're not paying to put all new poles in town just because they said so, right? So Whip City will now go check what the utility companies have said to do the work, right? They're the professionals in the field. They run electricity and fiber, so they'll know what the separation distances have to be on the poles. If a 30-foot pole is there and that's adequate, we don't need to add a 35-foot pole there, that kind of stuff. So yes, we still have a lot of information we need to know if we're even going to move forward. But in the interim, if the marketing thing's happening at the same time and we're not getting the take rate either, well, then we're dead in the water there too. So there's still a lot of moving parts, but Whip City's been a good partner and we've been working with them. Me and Quimby have been meeting with them. Well, Ryan more than me, unfortunately, because I have other things to do, but biweekly. So they're constantly updating us. Unfortunately, now we're just sort of at the mercy of the timeline of the utility companies.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other comments? Okay, next we will move to communications, correspondence, and announcements. I don't have any unless any other council. And we'll move to public hearings. We have a 6:15. Yet. Okay, so this is a public hearing to approve $12,000 from the Community Preservation Historic Fund account for the Town Hall Bell Restoration Project. The council members are Jim Biden, Kathy Hill, Anna Jones, myself, Connor O'Shea, Marilyn Richards, Ralph Page, and John Torsia. And I would ask the clerk to read the legal notice into the record.
East Long Meadow Town Council will hold a public hearing on February 11, 2025 at 6:15 PM in the media room of the Council on Aging located at 328 North Main Street to address a Community Preservation Act application for the Town Hall Bell Restoration Project. Information relating to this application is available for review by the public in the town clerk's office and on the town's website on the Community Preservation Committee's page. The public hearing may also be attended via Zoom webinar. For the council, Jean R. Quaglietti, Town Clerk, Clerk of the Council.
Thank you, Jeannie. So at this time, I would ask if the Community Preservation Committee member is present. Good evening.
Tom Bean, 31 Brook Street, Chair of the Historic Commission. We're requesting funding to restore the bell. Was moved out of the bell tower in early 2000. It's been out in the elements for 20 years. Originally it had a coating on the iron yoke and the A-frames, which is worn off. It's starting to rust. The bronze bell, the patina is getting very thick and starting to pit the bell itself. So we've talked to a couple different companies and got some quotes to disassemble the bell, have the iron yoke sandblasted and powder coated. The bell itself would be soft blasted and clear coated. And we just would like to save the bell. So,
Great.
any questions or?
Well, before we get to council questions, I'll ask, since this is a public hearing, the public now has an opportunity to offer any input, comments, questions. So if there's anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public input portion, and now the council, if there's anyone.
I just wanted to know if the location will remain the same.
We are talking about it at this point, about a possible location. Tom had mentioned maybe the new town hall in the lobby might be an indoor location. If we keep it outside, you're going to be doing this in 20 years. So we would be, amenable to whatever everybody would like to do. The new town hall seemed like a good option. We could be putting an acrylic case so that people won't, get their hands all over it, and might be a nice thing for the building. So
I like that.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
We had talked about a couple of things, and I'm thinking none of them were outside again because, like Tom said, we're just gonna have to do it again.
Right,
So
right.
hopefully somewhere on display so that everybody can see a shiny new bell.
Oh,
You knew. So if it's kept inside, I'm assuming we're not going to be doing a redstone base for it then. I mean, pound stone under a bell is probably around. I see the photos of the restored ones. They're beautiful.
they're gorgeous. Yeah.
I love the fact that you guys have considered to do a metal wheel on it instead of the wood wheel, so that way that would last, but yet it still meets the criteria for the time and all.
Yeah, it's time correct. Yeah, period correct.
The only thing I didn't see is the actual, I'm going to call it the ringer. I don't believe right now that it has any ability to be chimed.
It does. There's a ringer in the bell.
Is there?
It exists. It's in the
pictures. I see one basically mounted down below where you pull and it comes up and hits the side of the.
Well, it's a rope. You can pull it. They in 1994 at the anniversary, they had the fire department go up in the bell tower and they rang it for the last time.
Yeah.
A lot of firefighters were down there, and there's a whole article in the reminder about it. When they went up and rang the bell for the 100th anniversary, and so it's actually operable, which is also one of the concerns about putting it in a public place like the town hall, where you have to have to do some things to secure it. We wouldn't want people running up and whipping it. Somebody could get hurt, so it would have to be protected or immobilized in some way, shape, or form. But the actual ringer is in the bell. Then there's actually a little piece of rope on it, so.
I think it's a great project, and I'm 100% for it.
Right, and we could, it could be mounted, you could have a thin piece of redstone, or you could have, it was originally mounted on wooden rails in the bell tower, so you could also get some old, wooden rails and mount it on that in an indoor location to keep it off the ground.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Great. If there's no,
Exciting.
other- yes, I agree. If there's no other council comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing is closed and I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve the funding of the Community Preservation Town Hall Bell Restoration Project in the amount of $12,000 from the Historic Fund account. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? I'll do this as a roll call vote. Jim?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And John?
I'm a yes.
Great. So the bell is
Awesome, thank you so much. Good night.
Thank.
Thanks, Tom.
okay. Next, we have a 6:20 public hearing for the Brown Farm Structural Analysis Project. So this is a public hearing to approve $12,500 from the Community Preservation Act Public Recreation Fund account for the Brown Farm Structural Restoration Project. Council members are Jim Lyden, Kathy Hill, Anna Jones, myself, Connor O'Shea, Marilyn Richards, Ralph Page, and John Torsia. And I would ask the clerk to read the legal notice into the record.
The East Long Meadow Town Council will hold a public hearing on February 11, 2025 at 6:20 PM in the media room of the Council on Aging located at 328 North Main Street to address a Community Preservation Act application for the Brown Farm Structural Analysis Project. Information relating to this application is available for review by the public in the town clerk's office and on the town's website on the Community Preservation Committee's page. The public hearing may also be attended via Zoom webinar. For the council, Jean R. Quaglitti, Town Clerk of the Council.
Thank you, Jeannie. Then I would ask at this time if there's anyone from the Community Preservation Committee that would like to make a brief statement or presentation. Good evening.
Good evening. Hey, Bill. Hey there. Okay. Community Preservation Committee met on November 14th and the town manager presented this project to us. And it was voted unanimously because the committee would like to see the farm used, the barn used for whatever we can do with it, as opposed to tearing it down and starting all over again. So we did approve the structural design to see if it's even feasible before we move on. And it was a unanimous vote by the Community Preservation Committee.
Great. Thank you. Since this is a public hearing, the opportunity is now here if there's anyone in the public that would like to make a comment or ask any questions. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public input portion of the hearing. Member of the council have any questions or comments? Okay, if there's none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Closed, and I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the funding of the Community Preservation Brown Farm Structural Analysis Project in the amount of $12,500 from the Public Recreation Fund account.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, we will do a roll call vote. Jim?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And John? That one's pretty. Great. We have our 625 for the Community Preservation Center Field Drainage Project. Just get that one.
Disaster.
So this one is a public hearing to approve $58,000 from the Community Preservation Act Fund account for the Center Field Drainage Project. The council members again are Jim Lyden, Kathy Hill, Anna Jones, myself, Connor O'Shea, Marilyn Richards, Ralph Page, and John Torsia. And I would ask the clerk to read the legal notice into the record.
The East Long Meadow Town Council will hold a public hearing on February 11, 2025 at 6:25 PM in the media room of the Council on Aging located at 328 North Main Street to address a Community Preservation Act application for the Center Field Drainage Project. Information relating to this application is available for review by the public in the town clerk's office and on the town's website on the Community Preservation Committee's page. Public hearing may also be attended via Zoom webinar. For the council, Gina Quagletti, Town Clerk of the council.
Hey, Jeannie. And again, if you want to just give.
Sure. Donna Prather approached us on November 14th. And as everybody knows, there's been a problem with center field for decades. And she is looking into what it would take to alleviate the drainage issues. This is the first step. We haven't gone any further. I know in your packet, you did see some other quotes and pictures, but the committee initially approved just the engineering design before we go any further. And it was approved unanimously because the committee did agree. We do need playing fields in town. We need safe stuff for our kids to play on. Right now, anytime it rains, this field isn't even usable. So this is the beginning of a long project. That's why we approved it, just to see where it'll go.
Great. Thank you for the overview. Same thing. This is an opportunity for the public to make any comments if they wish. Sure. If you could just come forward and state your name and address again.
Jeff Gillespie, again, Forbes Hill Road. I didn't plan on commenting on this, but I'm just curious on, since you brought up, what is the problem with the center field flooding? You can bring me up to speed. Is it when the heavy rains and the ponds overflow, or is it just general rain? And
It's general rain because of the surface is clay. So it's very slow in draining. And
Right.
it renders the field unusable for days. Plus with all the other activities, you get the carnival in there, the field is trashed, things like that. So we're trying to solve a lot of different issues, starting with this study to see if it's even feasible to go forward.
the only time I notice it's unusable is when there's heavy downpour, not just general rain, but when the ponds overflow, it does back up onto the fields a little bit. So is it a pond issue, the retention pond issue, or is it just drainage?
It's the field issue. It's the drainage in the field.
So we're gonna look at the ponds and how they drain it all, because when those overflow, that means either there's too much water going in there or there's not enough outlet going out of there. And so to do all the drainage you want, if it's got no place to drain
Right.
the water into the pond that's just not relieving itself, then you're for naught.
I'm sure that's part of the project
Oh, that's part of the project?
to take that into account.
I'm just throwing that out there. I know it's the ponds overflow all the time.
Yeah.
Any other public comments? Okay, if there's none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
So instead of closing the public hearing, I'd bring it
Oh,
back to the board.
correct. Yeah.
And then once we're done commenting, then
Yep. All right. The public input portion of the hearing is closed. Does any a comment?
I only had kind of a technical question. I definitely like the project. We've got to definitely make sure that we're in the fields, as best as we can, that area. I know that we just approved another project for 12,000 out of the public recreation account, and then this would be hypothetically if the council approves 58. And I know the balance currently is 86,000. So just doing some quick math, we'd be left with only 16,000 in that particular account. I noticed our undesignated fund is pretty healthy
Yes.
right now. I don't know what the thought might be to maybe at least make some of it come out of undesignated.
we can't do that as a council. That's the
It's
decision.
ours. So, but we did discuss this, and it was brought up that, we agreed to cross that bridge when we get there. But we are aware that there will be only roughly $16,000 left in the account if this is approved. And there is a means for transferring funds through CPC or CPA.
And are you guys planning on doing that if this is approved?
We are meeting this Thursday, and it will be on the agenda because as part of my agenda on Thursday is an update on current projects. At that point, we will discuss it again.
I mean, we're overall, in a pretty good place, a lot better of even place than when I was on CPC. It's just, I think it's not necessarily the best idea to keep one account super, super low for a long period of time. And I know the state money has been slowing down since the pandemic. So it'll take a little bit longer to get it back up.
Any other counselors have a comment?
I do. So through the chair, I'm against this project for multiple reasons. We're currently in the process of building a new high school. We don't have any fields there. We've taken the fields in order to build the school. To look at this, this is something we couldn't even do for a few years because it would make absolutely zero sense to go ahead, tear up the center of town and the fields when the school's being done. The second thing is, we've done drainage. I believe it was along the third base line and the fencing in the center field. And because of all the traffic, the piping is all crushed and the drainage is no longer working. The third thing is, if you look at the ponds, the height of the pond is actually the height of your groundwater. So in order to put drainage in, you're not going to have the pitch available from the fields to there. And if the complaint is that because of clay, it's not draining, these drainage systems aren't going to work appropriately, you're going to have to strip the field to remove the clay. Yes, it'll drain in the 3-foot path. But at this time, I think this should be put on the back burner. And I would have a question for our town manager. Has the DPW been consulted with this? I didn't see any letter of reference from our DPW, and I also didn't see any letter from the town manager in support of this. And considering you're in charge of all town property, I would have expected to see that before we saw the application. And those are just thoughts.
So, well, a couple things. So the pond outfall has a pump in it that when it gets to a certain height, heads out to Shaker Road. The times that it's flooded, that pump was replaced a couple years ago. The times that it has flooded, that pump failed and water didn't go where it was supposed to go. I didn't write a letter in support of this because, it was a project that was proposed by someone else and the rec commission. At that point, I didn't see a huge need in the timeline in terms of, like you said, the school. We right now have only 2 90-foot diamonds. The one in the center is in desperate need of work. So from a timeline standpoint, it's not perfect, but that field does not drain. As it was explained and Bill already mentioned, if we have a rain out, it's a couple days before the field's playable again, which is difficult, especially when it's the only one. We're probably, we're still crossing our fingers that we keep the JV 90-foot diamond throughout the entire construction process. I'm not optimistic, but we are crossing our fingers. So, however, this is just a design, so we're not actually building anything there. It would be nice to know if and what we could do to fix that field so that it would be more playable. There's more to the project for that field than drainage, as I understand it. Regrading the infield so that water does get where it's supposed to go. I think that field, after that was approved, we started our work on the Chestnut Street CPC project, which is the parcel across from the church at Chestnut and Summers. And that feasibility started and stopped because they did the wetland study and there's no room on that parcel at all for fields. So we had anticipated 1 or 2 fields from that site. So as we stand, that field at the center needs to be upgraded, and drainage is its biggest problem. DPW has their reservations, like you mentioned. They installed that piping 10 years ago now down the third base line of the softball field out to the pond. Because of groundwater, the piping was shallow, and with all the carnival traffic and other events, yes, that pipe has had to been replaced multiple times. So there again, that's why we would do some sort of feasibility study / design to see if any of those conditions are changed and or would support this type of upgrade to help with the drainage in that area.
And so through the chair, my one other concern is I went back and looked at our 5-year capital plan, and I've not seen center field even listed. And if this is something that's been going on, it should have made our capital plan. Like I said, I know the field floods. I understand that. I understand the soil basis. I understand that a huge portion of this is compaction in the field. 4th of July, we are driving tractor trailers all over it. So the soil gets compacted. When the soil compacts, guess what? It's not going to take in any water. I would rather see at this time that we hold off. Let's get the high school taken care of. Let's encourage our DPW to aerate the towns to allow more water in multiple times during the year. They can do it a couple times in the spring, a couple times in the fall. And not to mention like what Long Meadow just did this past year with the new fields over there. You aerate them, but then you go and broadcast sand over it so that the holes are full of sand, which allows more of the drainage. It's a cheap, short-term fix so that we're not getting into a $500,000 project, which can't even really get going for 5 years. That's my thought process on it.
Well, let me make it clear. The committee never discussed the total project. The only thing we discussed was the design. I know what's on the other side, because we saw it all.
Right.
And I will say there was some hesitation by the committee on the overall cost, to your point. So it's not a done deal by any means. This was just a start.
Exactly. And I understand that. I just don't like spending money on something that we're not going to be.
No, I get that.
What I end up seeing, especially in like delineations and stuff like that, they're only good for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You start and then you got to do it again in a few years. So when we're ready to do it, let's do the whole thing at once. That's my thought process. Again, I'm only one of the 7 members here.
Yeah. I have a quick question. I don't think I mind the study, but I guess I'm thinking long-term. And if we're going to spend, I see this quote from our environment, big number. Are we willing to spend that money on center fields and then continuously have the carnival and things of?
Yeah, that's a good.
Like I said,
I think that's just something we have to think about if we're going to proceed, like maybe.
like I said, that's the next step, and the committee didn't even go down that. We weren't going to go down that road yet. It's a huge number. I agree. By the time we go to do it, the number is going to be even worse.
Yes.
So this was just
No, absolutely. I'm just.
what you guys saw is presented to us. All right.
No, I'm just saying, I just hope that's in your thoughts.
It is. Oh, it definitely is.
Okay.
I think my reservation is just knowing that if we're going through this Centertown district planning process now and we haven't really fully decided as a community what that may or may not entail, it doesn't make sense for me to say, let's spend money on engineering and a study for something that may not be the future use of that property. And it doesn't mean that it won't be, it just, we don't know yet.
Right. And I understand all your comments. All I'm doing is bringing it forward.
Okay. Any other comments? If there's none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Aye. Any opposed? Entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the funding of the Community Preservation Center Field Drainage Project in the amount of $58,000 from the Public Recreation Fund account.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, this will be a roll call. Jim?
No.
Kathy?
No,
Anna?
Yes.
I am a no. Marilyn?
not yet. No.
Ralph?
No.
And John?
No.
I will communicate that to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Before
Really good points.
we have
Very good.
a 6:30. We have continued from January 28th, 2025, the accessory dwelling unit bylaw. Need to get to that one.
Good stuff here.
Okay. This is a continued public hearing for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment related to the town conforming to the new Affordable Homes Act, allowing accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and required second reading. The council members are Jen Lydon, Anna Jones, myself, Connor O'Shea, Marilyn Richards, Ralph Page, and John Torsia. And I would ask the clerk to read the legal notice into the record.
East Long Meadow Town Council will hold a public hearing on January 14 at 6:15 PM in the media room of the Council on Aging located at 28 North Main Street. First reading of proposed amendments to the Town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws relative to the amendments necessary for the town to conform to the new Affordable Homes Act, allowing accessory dwelling units, ADUs, by right. Amendments include the addition of subsection 450-5.11, accessory dwelling units to the East Long Meadow zoning bylaw, and for the amendments of subsection 450-3.3, additional use, dimensional, and density regulations, subsection 450-9.3, projects requiring site plan review, subsection 450-11.2, terms defined, table 3-1, schedule of use regulations, and table 3-2, table of dimensional regulations of the East Long Meadow zoning bylaws. Public hearing may also be attended via Zoom webinar. Information relating to this bylaw is available for public inspection at the town clerk's office, an electronic version on the town's website. For the council, Jean R. Quaquetti, town clerk of the council.
Thank you, Jeannie. If you would mind joining us. Good evening.
Hi, Rob.
Oh. Would you mind just providing a brief overview of the ADU bylaw and how we got to this point?
Sure, I could,
Welcome back.
there's been a lot of discussion on this. I'll talk about the most recent rendition from the previous public hearing to now. So, the Planning Matter Subcommittee did get the chance to meet last week I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but recently to discuss the most recent amendments involving shifting away attached and contained ADUs from requiring site plan review by the planning board to being administratively approved by the planning department. Since then, I had a conversation with the building commissioner because Mr. Page brought up a comment during that meeting where it made more sense to combine the review process through the building department between both departments for a more efficient and coordinated review process. So before you tonight, you have two drafts. You have one draft, which includes the administrative approval process through the planning department. It has the yellow highlights. Those are changes made by the Planning Matter Subcommittee at the previous meeting. Then you have this other version, which includes language that shows in green what alternative text could be if it was just we're calling it ADU building permit. And the building commissioner and I thought that was a good idea. It would be its own separate application on OpenGov for the building department. Under state law, you have to group building permits based on the type of construction you're doing. So if it's residential versus commercial or industrial. So he was totally fine with it being its own separate building permits. So when you apply for this ADU building permit, it's essentially the same OpenGov portal you would do for any other type of building permit. It's just you have a question where you have to answer if it's going to be an attached ADU or if it's going to be a detached ADU. And in that situation, if you select detached, then you have to wait for the planning board review before you can continue the rest of the building permit. If it was attached, there is an item for the planning department to review the plans to make sure everything conforms to the zoning bylaws. Then they can continue with the rest of the building permit process. And Will and I thought that made the most sense. That's efficient. We can incorporate other departments into the review process, including health department, DPW, fire, everyone. The online permitting has tremendously improved our ability to communicate across town hall. And doing the same thing with ADUs, just grouped into one place, not only makes that more efficient, but also helps with our ability to report to the state every year on the number of permits we issue. So having it in one location versus two separate spots made the most sense, with the exception of when you have to apply for site plan review. Obviously, you have to go through the site plan review application process in addition to the building permit process. So I would say between the previous public hearing and now, that was the biggest change. I don't know how the council wishes to proceed, but that's pretty much the only updates I have for today.
Great. Thank you, Rob.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that the other?
Yeah. Do you want to provide an update?
Sure. I think one of the other, when we met, it wasn't last week, it was the week before.
Yeah.
I think one of the other big changes we made was, let me get to that section, about the short-term
That's right. Yes.
rentals. And I think we got rid of it the ADU shall not be used as short-term rentals, allowing them. But I think we were under the impression that residences are allowed as short-term rentals, but I think in the meantime, we realized that they're not.
No, so we don't really, the way our zoning bylaw works is that if something's not specifically permitted, it's technically not allowed. Usually the categories can be broad enough to where you can include certain uses into specific categories. In this case, short-term rental is prohibited because it's temporary lodging. And in our bylaw, we prohibit temporary lodging, including motels, campgrounds, et cetera. So because of that, short-term rental is also excluded. So the committee decided to, leave out that restrictive language.
Right.
In the event that if you want to update the bylaw in the future to allow for these, that's possible. So you don't have the double restrictions there.
I'm sorry, would short-term rentals like include also like Airbnbs?
Yes. Vrbo, Airbnb, anything where you advertise like an alternative hotel service. Yeah.
Since we're on the subject, yeah, our current bylaw does not allow temporary housing. My feeling is that we should put the restriction back into the document because this document is what most people are going to use if they're going to, construct an ADU. It doesn't hurt to say it twice. I'm not looking forward to East Long Meadow being an Airbnb all over the place. I mean, it's a possibility. We have 3.
The fireworks.
Yeah, as far as I know, we have 3. Anyway, I would like to see at some point in this process that we put that language back into the document. I know we have a definition of short-term rental, which is going into our section 11, article 11 of the definitions. And I think that's written very well. It should be there. So that would be what I'd like to see.
On that train of thought, I do have as something for the new bylaw review committee to think about is the different definitions of short-term and temporary lodging. Because even when I was reading our existing bylaws, what the bylaw says is not actually the same as the name of the term and the definition. So to me, I'm not sure that it's super enforceable if our terms don't match in what we're saying we allow and don't allow.
Yeah.
We have a lot of unenforceable things in our bylaws.
Yes.
So through the chair, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
So what we were given was 3 different versions, the original, then the one that the planning matter subcommittee had okayed, and then
Now this
more changes. It would be my suggestion that we read in to the record the one that the planning matter subcommittee recommended, and then under discussion, make any adjustments to that one. So that way there, at least as we're reading it, we're all reading the same thing.
I agree. And I'll offer the council the opportunity to accept any amendments or.
It was put in your packet for informational purposes. So you know what the language would look like to adopt it into the bylaw.
Just so that you know, I do only have a half a page of adjustments, so.
All right, so I am pretty sure.
Sheets for the book, for the good book.
Pretty sure that's page 20 of 55 that we start on. Would anyone like to kick us off with please?
So what's your suggestion? I think there's, how many pages? Oh, there's only like 10 pages.
If we take a page and go around like we did last time.
Same thing as last time, so I'd love to start us off.
Sure.
So what we have is in front of us, it says Article 3, PMSC, which is Planning Matter Subcommittee updates are highlighted, use regulations. Subsection 450-3.3, additional use, dimensional and density regulations. B, residential districts, AA, A, B, and C. Number 1, accessory buildings in residential areas. 1A, accessory use is customarily incidental to any use or building permitted herein are permitted, provided that such use shall not be offensive nor dangerous to life by reason of health or fire, and further provided that such accessory use shall not include any business, industry, trailer camp, manufacturing, or commercial use or other activity conducted for gain other than what is specifically set forth in subsection 450-8.8 for home-based trade, together with a special permit. Yes. Just making sure we're not changing something. Number B, no more than one house trailer may be located on any lot. Such trailer may not be used for living quarters. Such trailer shall conform to accessory building setback, side yard and rear yard requirements of the district in which it is located. C, an accessory building shall not be used for residence purposes unless it adheres to the special use regulations set forth in subsection 450-5.11. Number 2, private garages. A garage or storage space for private motor vehicles shall be permitted only as an accessory use and shall be subject to all the applicable provisions of this bylaw pertaining to accessory buildings. 3, lot coverage. No building shall be erected or altered so as to cover more than 25% of the area of the lot on which it is located. No principal building shall be erected so as to cover less than 7% of the lot in which it is located in Resident District C. In the event that the lot area in Resident District C exceeds the minimum lot area, the minimum lot coverage shall be no greater than that required for a minimum sized lot expressed in square feet. 4, setback. A, accessory building or structure setback shall be the setback of the district of the primary building, and the setback, side yard, and rear yard requirements must be met for the district in which the accessory building or structure is constructed. Any accessory building or structure, not including accessory dwelling units, shall be constructed within the side yard and or rear yard in the district in which it is constructed, shall be erected in such a manner that no portion of this accessory building or structure shall be closer to the street line or lines than the maximum rear setback of the primary building plus 10 feet, in which event an accessory building or structure may be constructed within 5 feet of the side lot line or rear yard line. Notwithstanding the foregoing, fencing for neighborhood swimming pools shall conform to the setback, side yard, and rear yard requirements for a principal building for the district in which such pool is constructed. No part of any building or other structure, including porches, breezeways, or other structures attached to the primary building, shall be erected so as to be nearer to the street line than the nearest building located within 250 feet of either side of the lot facing the same street and located within the same area or district. But in no case will the required setback in this subsection exceed 60 feet. In the event of a primary structure having been erected prior to the zoning bylaw under conditions which allowed its erection with less than the setback requirements of this bylaw, the next building erected adjacent to this lot shall have its setback determined by the following formula. The setback of the existing dwelling added to the setback required in the district and the result divided by 2. The purpose of this shall be to average the required setback with that setback of the existing building. Such formula shall be applied within 250 feet of either side of an existing primary structure which does not conform to the setback requirements in the district in which it is located. Who wants to go next?
Article 5, Special Use Regulations, Section 450, subsection 5-11, Accessory Dwelling Units, ADUs. A, purpose. This bylaw addresses the necessary permitting path and design requirements for accessory dwelling units known as ADUs in order to site these buildings in an appropriate manner for the community. B, terms defined. Accessory dwelling unit, ADU. An accessory building or addition containing a housing unit inclusive of sleeping, cooking, and sanitary facilities on the same lot as a single-family dwelling. An ADU maintains a separate entrance, either directly from the outside or through an entry hall or corridor shared with the principal dwelling, sufficient to meet the requirements of the state building code for safe egress. An ADU is not larger in gross floor area than 1/2 the gross floor area of the principal dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. ADUs are incidental and subordinate to the primary building, an ADU cannot exist without a single-family dwelling on a lot. Attached ADU. An ADU which is in addition to an existing single-family dwelling and has its own separate entrance. Attached ADUs may also have internal entryways which connect the single-family dwelling to the ADU. Contained ADU. An ADU which is contained entirely within an existing or new single-family dwelling and requires no significant external changes to the dwelling or site beyond entrances and windows required by the building code. Detached ADU, an ADU that is a freestanding and detached building which is incidental and subordinate to the primary dwelling. Detached ADUs may either be the product of new construction or an existing accessory building or structure which is converted into an ADU. C, applicability. 1, ADUs are allowed by right in the residence AA, A, B, and C zoning districts and are permitted in one of two ways. A, attached and contained ADUs require administrative approval by the Director of Planning. B, detached ADUs require site plan review approval by the Planning Board. Detached ADUs are not eligible for site plan review waiver. 2, ADUs shall not be larger in gross floor area than one half the gross floor area of the primary dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. 3, ADUs shall only be placed on residential lots which have a single-family dwelling on them.
No more than one ADU shall be placed on a lot. 5, a mobile home or any other temporary structure are prohibited from being used or classified as ADUs. D, general requirements. 1, all ADUs shall meet the requirements of the following regulations under Massachusetts state law. A, Massachusetts State Building Code 780 CMR as amended. B, State Sanitary Code 105 CMR 410 as amended. C, Title 5 of the State Environmental Code 310 CMR 15.000 as amended. D, any other relevant local, state, and federal regulations. 2, ADUs shall have the appropriate facilities, including but not limited to kitchens, bathrooms with a sink, toilet, and shower, potable water source, plumbing connections, hot water, functional heating system, proper ventilation, working electricity, and operable windows. 3, ADUs shall not be sold or transferred separate and apart from the primary dwelling. The primary dwelling and the ADU shall remain in common or single ownership. 4, attached and contained ADUs shall maintain a separate entrance directly to the outside. 5, ADUs shall be suitable for habitation all year round and meet the minimum standards for the State Sanitary Code 105 CMR 410 as amended. 6, occupancy of an ADU shall be limited to what is allowable under Massachusetts State Building Code 780 CMR as amended and the State Sanitary Code 105 CMR 410 as amended. 7, ADUs shall have their own individual metered electrical connection in accordance with 105 CMR 410.354 as amended. This 9, but would be the new number 8. 1, off-street parking spot shall be provided for an ADU. 10, the ADU shall have a separate address from the primary dwelling for the purposes of receiving mail and deliveries. An ADU may have the same street number as the primary dwelling and be followed by an alphanumeric character, for example, 121A, 121B. Both dwelling units shall be easily distinguishable and properly numbered from the street in order for emergency services to identify each building. 11, an ADU shall have separate trash and recycling receptacles from the primary dwelling and must comply with Board of Health requirements. 12, in order to encourage the development of ADUs for disabled and handicapped individuals and persons with limited mobility, the permit granting authority may allow reasonable deviation from dimensional requirements of the zoning bylaw where necessary to install features that facilitate access and mobility for disabled persons.
13, right? Yes. 13, detached ADUs. A detached ADU may either be the result of a new construction or the rehabilitation conversion of an existing accessory building or structure. The rehabilitated, converted building or structure shall abide by the provisions of this section. subsection 450-5.11 in order to be considered an ADU. B, detached ADUs shall have separate water and sewer connection from the primary dwelling and shall adhere to the DPW water and sewer regulations. C, detached ADUs shall meet all primary building setback requirements for the district in which it is located. See Table 3-2 dimensional regulations. D, detached ADUs that may require a separate curb cut and driveway shall adhere to the DPW curb cut regulations and gain the necessary approvals. E, detached ADU shall adhere to the height requirement in the district in which it is located. F, there shall be no occupancy of a detached ADU until the building commissioner has issued a certificate of occupancy. E, review process. 1, attached and contained ADUs. A, the applicant for the attached or contained ADU shall submit the following to the Director of Planning for administrative approval. 1, site or plot plan of the property with the ADU setbacks, lot dimensions, and all building dimensions clearly visible. Said plan shall also have lot coverage calculations shown. 2, parking plan may be incorporated within the site plan or plot plan, which shows number of available parking spots on site. 3, building or floor plans. B, upon receipt of a complete application, the Director of Planning shall have no more than 14 days to issue an official decision. The decision shall state one of the following: 1, approval with no recommendations; 2, approval with recommendations before issuance of building permit; 3, denial with written explanation of required changes before resubmission. You want me to just finish? Okay.
C, once an administrative approval is approved, the applicant is eligible to obtain a building permit. 2, detached ADUs. A, the applicant for a detached ADU shall furnish a site plan that conforms to the requirements under subsection 450-9.4 and subsection 450-5.11D. The provisions of subsection 450-9.5, subsection 450-9.6, subsection 450-9.7, and subsection 450-9.8 shall apply to the permitting of detached ADUs. In accordance with subsection 450-9.3, no building permit for a detached ADU may be issued until a site plan has been endorsed by the planning board. F, enforcement. 1, the building commissioner or their designee administer and enforce the provisions of this bylaw as detailed in subsection 40-7.1. 2, no building shall be constructed or changed in use or configuration until the building commissioner has issued appropriate building permits. 3, relative permits shall be obtained from the Department of Public Works and Board of Health before the ADU may be inhabited.
So before you go on, can I just make a quick suggestion under Article 9 site plan review? That we just note that the only thing that's changing is we're adding a number 8 under subsection 450-9.3. And subsection 8 will now state detached accessory dwelling units, ADUs. I don't see any reason to read the entire site plan review in, because we're just adding number 8, detached accessory dwelling units. So with that, Jim, if you want to jump on to Article 11 definitions, that would be fine.
Gotcha. Article 11 definitions, subsection 450-11.2, terms defined, terms included below are those relevant to ADUs. Unless otherwise specified in other sections of the bylaw, the following terms shall have the meanings indicated. Accessory buildings or structures, a building or structure attached from a primary building on the same lot, customarily incidental and subordinate to the primary building or use. Accessory building or structure cannot exist without a primary building on a lot. An accessory building shall not be used for residence purposes unless it adheres to the special use regulation set forth in subsection 450-5.11. Accessory dwelling unit, ADU. An accessory building or addition containing a housing unit inclusive of sleeping, cooking, and sanitary facilities on the same lot as a single-family dwelling. An ADU maintains a separate entrance, either directly from the outside or through an entry hall or corridor shared with a principal dwelling sufficient to meet the requirements of the state building code for safe egress. An EDU is no larger in gross floor area than 1/2 gross floor area of the principal dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. ADUs are incidental and subordinate to the primary building. An ADU cannot exist without a single-family dwelling unit on a lot.
I think similarly, the rest of those definitions haven't changed.
Right.
So we can skip to both gross floor area. Gross floor area and the next.
That's it. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Just continue.
Sure.
Gross floor area. The sum of areas of all floors of the building, including basement, cellars, mezzanine, and intermediate floored tiers and penthouses of headroom height, measured from the exterior faces or exterior walls from the center line of the wall separating buildings, but excluding covered sidewalks, open roofed areas, porches or similar spaces. In 2, pipe trenches, exterior terraces or steps, chimneys, roof overhangs, or similar features. Next definition, primary dwelling, the main or most important dwelling on a lot. Next definition, short-term rental, an occupied property that is not a hotel, motel, lodging, or bed and breakfast establishment, where at least one room or unit is rented out by an operator through the use of advanced reservations. A short-term rental includes an apartment, house, cottage, and condominium. It does not include property that is rented out through tenancies, at will, or month-to-month leases. It also does not include timeshare properties or bed and breakfast homes.
So through the chair, I just want to point out under the definitions that were just read in, those are the ones that are changing. There are other definitions, but they have no changes in them.
And then table 3-1, the schedule of use regulations. The only change there is to add a number 12 for accessory dwelling unit ADU. Under standards and conditions, see section 450-5.11. And under AA, it'll be yes, A, yes, B, yes, C, yes, elderly residential, no, commercial, no, no, industrial, no, industrial garden park, no, golf recreation, no, planned use unit residential, no, planned adult residential, no, and mixed use building.
Good job.
Remember the names. And then under table 3-2, the table of dimensional regulations, I believe the only changes are to the notes at the bottom. So under number 2, it would now read any accessory building or structure excluding accessory dwelling units constructed at least 10 feet behind the principal building can be erected no closer than 5 feet to the rear and or side yard property line. Any other accessory building or structures must meet the required side and rear yard setbacks for the principal building. Okay, we have read it in. At this time, it is a public hearing, so if there's anyone in the audience that would like to make any comments, come forward.
John, you left.
Hi.
Thank you. Russell Denver, 2 Leicester Street. I'm the chair of the planning board. So we did indeed vote to submit this to you for further action. But I just want to lay out a couple of things. So this bylaw is required by the state. It's another piece of where the state is sticking their nose to local zoning. So this town has had the misfortune of going through a number of lawsuits that we've had zoning in place that the courts and therefore the legislature have overturned. Specifically, Maryland knows quite well the solar issue. So it costs this town a lot of money defending that suit. So the state felt that they could step in and override local zoning. Hundreds and hundreds of years, local zoning has been it. They have decided zones should be how they should be enforced. And now recently, the state has decided to step into the shoes of local communities to make these changes. This is one example. I'm saying this because I think members who are here from the planning board believe that this, although we're going to have to pass it because state mandated, potentially has the ability to make major impact on this community. Some people will say positive. I think the majority of the planning board will say negative. I've always used my street as an example. 12 houses on the street. I believe at least 6 of them would be capable of having an accessory dwelling unit on it. That's going to increase the traffic, increase the number of kids, increase sewer, water, et cetera, et cetera. That's a small street. You think of all the other residential districts in this town, and then all of a sudden, all these little tiny houses are going to pop up, and it has the potential to change the character of the town. And I kind of relate this to, I'm sure Mr. Torchin knows as well, the MBTA Communities Act, which now the state has come in, required communities that abut an MBTA station or adjacent town to require affordable housing. And if they don't, then they are no longer eligible to receive state grants. So we've got the state sticking their nose into local business where historically it has never been. And I guess I'd like to ask anybody from the town, if Mr. Pupolo called the town to see what the impact would be on this, whether Jacob Oliveira called anyone from the town to see what the impact would be, whether Brian Ash called anyone, or whether Maura Healy called anyone in East Long Meadow to see what the impact would be. So I'm just letting people know that this wasn't brought forward by the planning board. Although we do believe we need more housing, some types of housing, but it's a kind of a mishmash on how it's being done. And I don't think it's positive. I think you leave local zoning to local boards and committees who know East Long Meadow better than the state does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to make a comment?
Can I just sort of piggyback on Russ's thought there? Obviously, yeah, we were sort of, our hand was forced here. But I also want to spin that to a positive and just say, from the planning director to almost every department in town that helped create and author this bylaw, to the planning board who reviewed it, to the town council and its planning matters subcommittee, to write, review, amend, review in 188 days is exactly how government is supposed to work. So the response to something that we really had no control over was exceptional. So I just want to take my hat off to everybody that had any part in this entire process, regardless of how you vote. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal, almost unheard of. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, seeing no other public comments, I will close the public input portion of the hearing. And it is now up to the council to ask any questions.
Ralph. Can I go first? Because you got yeah.
I've got yours listed here
Oh,
too.
all right, then
so-
take care of
No,
mine.
go ahead. Go ahead. You're good with it.
I would like to add the provision for ADUs shall not be used as a short-term rental. It would be located under,
E8.
wait a minute, section 450 subsection 5.11 D. 8. I'd like to add it back. ADUs shall not be used as a short-term rental.
Would you like to make that motion to amend?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. It's the
Easy
motion
way to do
passes.
it.
Okay, thanks, Ralph.
Yeah, there's my third one. Okay, that's easy.
Ralph.
So I've had the wonderful pleasure of reading this and rereading it and reading it and going into the state, and the state's created 760 CMR 71, which is what they try to put together for regulations and suggestions as far as what they think, whether it be definitions or how it should be crafted. But my main concern with what we've created is on an attached or contained ADU, I think we should require a building permit. If someone's putting an addition on their house, all they need is a building permit. I don't think requiring administrative review from the planning department is necessary, because under the building department and the building codes, they have to meet all the building codes. They have to already supply a plot plan if he so requests it, a layout if he requests it, designs. The administrative review, I think, should be done internally, and I don't think it should be part of the bylaw. I think when an ADU application comes into the building department and the planning department should talk about it. They should look over the zoning bylaws. They should see what's allowed, what isn't allowed. Now, I'm not talking about detached. Under the detached, I do believe we should have a site plan. I believe we should know where it's going to be located, if there's driveways or anything like that. But for the attached and contained, I just think we should settle for a building permit. Just like we've done for years, there's many, many houses out there that have quote unquote, what I would call in-law apartments. There's been no issues because you know what? The building department maintains that, hey, you got to be this far from the property line and all of that. So with that, I have a few suggestions. Under 450, 511, which would be C1A, applicability. I just want to make sure I got it. I would remove, so the language now is attached and contained ADUs require administrative approval by the director of planning. I would suggest that that be removed. And if you want, I'm going to go through these because they're all tied together. If you guys disagree with me and you think the planning department should have control, then all of these will probably need to stay in. Under 450, 511, D7, it states now ADU shall have their own individual metered electrical connection in accordance with 105 CMR 410.354. If you look up 105 CMR subsection 410.3.54, it does not require separate electrical. On a attached or contained ADU, if the ADU, if you're going to rent it and your electric and your gas are included, you don't need a separate meter. It only needs a separate meter if it's a standalone and you're going to have them pay for it. So I would suggest a change in language on that. So to state ADU shall comply with 105 CMR 410.354 regarding metered electrical connections. So basically what that does is it just says, hey, go to that and follow that guidance. Under 450, 5.11 E1A. E1 says attached and contained ADUs. Under A, I would suggest that we change the language that says requires a building permit and must conform to 450-5.11D general requirements. So what this would do would be to say, hey, all the general requirements apply, plus you need a building permit. Then I would suggest number 1 through 4 that we just remove the language in its entirety. Under E1B, remove, let me just remove in its entirety, number B. So basically under review process, we're just going to be replacing E1A with the language that I just read and removing. Yeah, I can read it all in if you want. It's basically all the approvals. And then the last thing I had was under 455.11 E2A, which is detached ADUs. Under number A, at the very end, I've got on my sheet number 13 listed. So it says and 450-5.11 D13. I think we should remove the 13. So instead of it only talking about the detached ADUs, that instead it basically says all general requirements are needed. So I would read it, the applicant for a detached ADU shall furnish a site plan that conforms to the requirements under subsection 450-9.4 and subsection 450-5.11D, which basically just means any general requirements that you need for an ADU, you have to conform to. Other than that, I got nothing. I think the question comes in is, how's the council feel? Do we just attached and contained ADUs, say a building permit? Or do we say we want the planning department to have administrative control over it? I don't see that as necessary because I think internally they can do it. They talk, they're next to each other all the time.
So I do have a comment. So I did provide alternative language that actually goes with the idea that Ralph had. That might specify things a little bit further, but I do want to suggest about the separate electrical meter connections. So it says under the CMR, the reference that, so I'm referring to rental housing because these will be rented out once people construct them. I guarantee you, under state law, they have the right to rent them out and the town can't stop them from doing so. Usually when you have multiple units in the same building, you have multiple metered connections, or the landlord does a system where they split the cost of the total building electrical amongst all the tenants. But you have to remember, these buildings also have shared common areas, and it's not fair for tenants of certain buildings to have to split that up. So we thought maybe to avoid that, it makes sense to require separate meter connections in the building. But obviously, if the town doesn't want to require that on to the applicant of a ADU, then so be it. We can take that out. But I wanted to suggest that's the thinking behind including that language, was so landlords or whoever the property owner is that's going to rent out an ADU is going to put in the separate meter connection there. That was the thinking behind it.
So may I?
Sure.
So you're considering basically, if someone's building a separate addition onto the house, that they may want a separate meter onto the house.
If they want to rent it out, I mean, it avoids the headache of having to work with the tenant every month to have them do a calculation to see.
And that's building that for their in-law. They build it.
It's a fair point.
And then down the road, they rent it out.
It applies carte blanche, but we could definitely specify it.
But except the actual state says you don't have to have separate meters. The only time you have to have them is if you're going to bill for the electricity. In other words, your rent's $1,000 plus electric. Well, if you're doing it that way, then you have to have a separate meter. If you're saying, hey, it's $1,000 a month and that includes electric and gas, then you're okay with it. And
so can we suggest maybe putting language or at least amending that instead of removing it to say if it's being rented out, then you have to put this in, just so you can exclude those who are using it solely for family or for like an in-law.
But then you may have to go through and rewire the whole house in order to get a separate meter in. I think a lot of these, detached, I agree with you 100%, separate meter and all. Attached or contained, I don't see it happening. I don't see the electric company even wanting to do it.
Can I just, I thought that was the point, was Grid and or Eversource required separate meters. I thought when we had that meeting with all the departments that the utility companies
required
outside of state law required a meter for every residence.
It's a general practice. That's
so I will say the gas company refuses to put a separate meter in for a separate building on my property. They said, no, you run the line off of your existing gas line.
Huh.
So electric is,
and that's what started this. I went, well, what do you mean?
Gas versus electric.
Yeah,
it's big difference.
That's not another residence, right?
Not yet. My law hasn't been passed yet. Okay.
So there's, I mean, in your example, that's an accessory structure, right?
Well, I mean, at the corner of it could be an ADU.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's what I was considering. And I'm like, well, geez, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to want to run separate gas and all in. So I contacted them and they went, absolutely not.
So
one line per lot.
I don't recall our conversation about the gas, but I think the electric provider was the one that said that they will they prefer and or impose that they want a separate meter on every dwelling unit.
I believe when we had our big staff meeting about this,
Yeah.
I think it was DPW brought that up
Okay.
and said that's something they've been seeing with the utility companies. So for water and gas, we don't require separate meters. Like that could be done together, even if it's attached or detached. It's just with the electric, because electrical lines are a lot, I'm sure it's still difficult to install, but a lot easier to install than water and sewer and gas lines. You could easily put the separate meter in there. It's just, that was brought up to me that that's a standard practice now. And it made sense to put that language in the bylaw, just so we could see that more often and avoid situations where you don't know, like the tenant might get screwed over by the landlord because they don't know how much they're paying electricity costs. I think it's just a good way of starting a practice where it holds people accountable, but also avoids issues in the future. I've seen this happen in other communities.
I tend to agree with Ralph, though, that I think it's fine if the utilities or other people want to enforce it beyond the town to hook that up and do it, but I don't think we need to impose the limitation on ourselves.
That's fine.
If the landlord wants to just not charge you specifically for electricity and leave that between them and the tenant to figure out how they're going to pay according to state law, I don't think the town needs to be involved in that decision-making process.
And didn't Ralph say that if you do charge for electricity, it has to be separate?
Yes. Yeah, that's part of the CMR.
So I feel like if they're gonna charge for electricity, it has to be separate, and if they're not gonna charge, it doesn't. So I feel like we're kind of covered.
Yeah.
Right?
But I do think it's critical to mention section, the 105 CMR 410.354, and make them follow those regulations. They're state regulations.
You had something, Marilyn?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I'm all
okay.
set.
You want to pick a few of mine?
No, that's quite all right.
Okay. So with that, Ralph, do you want to turn that into a motion to amend?
No. I guess just as a question, could you read aloud the amendment that you want so I can record it down?
I have it. You can have it.
Jackie's got it too.
Oh, yeah. So do you want me to go through these separately and take a vote on each?
I
It
think
may
that's
be the fastest way to do it.
Yeah,
That's fine.
So I move that we change the language under subsection 450-5.11 C1A. We remove the language that's currently in there and we replace it. Hold on. Let me find it again.
Yeah, right here.
C1A, that we remove the language. Okay, so I move that under subsection 450-5.11 C1A, we remove the language.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor with the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Amendment passes. Next.
Okay, subsection 450-5.11 D7. We replace D7 with the language, with the following language. ADUs shall comply with 105 CMR 410.354 regarding metered electrical connections.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes. Next.
You. Okay, subsection 450-5.11 E1A, which is under the review process. E1A should basically say, requires a building permit and must conform to subsection 450-5.11D general requirements.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes.
Okay, subsection 450-5.11. E1A, numbers 1 through 4. I move that we remove the language.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes.
Okay, next is subsection 450-5.11 E1B. And I would suggest that we remove B in its entirety.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And to amend passes. Are there any others?
Yep. So, well, I'm looking because it says C and I thought it was number 4. So in the same section, I would suggest under 450-5.11 E1C, which states once an administrative approval is approved, the applicant is eligible to obtain a building permit. That be removed.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes.
Subsection 450-5.11 E 2A. So E2 is detached ADUs under number A. Remove the subsection 13, which is right at the end of it. So the section would now read, the applicant for a detached ADU shall furnish a site plan that conforms to the requirements under subsection 450-9.4 and subsection 450-5.11D.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
And my last one. Under gross floor area, which is under the definitions.
Page 10.
So it's the third line down. It says measured from the exterior faces of exterior walls. I believe that should read measured from the interior faces of exterior walls. Meaning when you're inside of a house, you're measuring from wall to wall. Where currently what this is saying is you're outside of the house to the inside of the house. And I base that on the brand new 760R CMR 71, which they've just changed as of January 31st to say interior.
Oh, sorry.
And by the way, well, let's go with that. So that's my motion.
Is there a second? Okay, is there any other discussion about that? Yeah. Okay, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes. Is that it, Ralph?
So that's all for my changes, but I do have a question for Rob. Have you seen the new 760 CMR with all the changes that they've made in the last couple of weeks?
I've not.
Then I am going to give you the ADU suggested changes that I had. And I'll give you that too, because it's amazing the amount of language and all that they changed in it. It's absurd.
Yeah.
Sure, that won't be the last amendment to this bylaw.
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
that's my point.
That's right.
My point is, although we're doing all of this, that's not even finalized and they've changed the amount of red that went through it. It was like, it's like you rewrote the whole thing, including gross floor area definition.
You know for a fact that's the definition under the new building code, correct? Because we want the definition of gross floor area to be the same for both building department review and for planning board review, just so there's no
Yeah,
discrepancy.
so the gross floor area, other than changing exterior to interior, it's exactly the same.
Okay.
But under their definition is going to be completely different.
That was the definition under the ADU regulations, yeah. But they're confusing us now.
Oh, they're going to change everything and,
Shocker. Yeah.
and again, they've added absurd amount to it and including dimensions, setbacks and stuff, which I'm not in agreement, but we'll see what their final outcome is. Other than that, I got nothing.
We just did it.
Oh, we did. Oh,
Yeah. I do have one that I would like to offer. I would move that we amend table 3-1 schedule of use regulations to remove excluding accessory dwelling units from number 2 under notes and remove not including accessory dwelling units from section 450-3.3B4A.
Could you give the location again, please?
Sure. Table 3-1 under the notes, number 2. And then section 453.3B4A. I know, two
Let's
spots.
do one at a time.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is they're the same thing in two different places. So if you do one, you would have to do the second.
Okay, so what was the other one? 450.
450.3.3B4A. So essentially my intent behind that is to remove the additional restriction that detached ADUs would have to be following the primary structure's setback requirements instead of following the existing accessory structure setbacks.
I guess my response would be, if they were following an accessory structure, that means that that the ADU could just be 5 feet from the property line. And I think that's, for a dwelling unit, I think that's a little bit too loose, to be honest with you.
Else?
Go through the chair.
Sure.
I tend to agree with Marilyn. I think the building footprint would be the way to go. But I would put forwards under the new 760 CMR dimensional standards. It basically says if you allow an accessory structure to be placed there, that you have to allow an ADU to be placed there. Again, these are not finalized, but it looks like the state is going into that route.
It is what it is.
Well, knowing that down the road, we're going to have to make adjustments to this, I would be more apt to leave it a little more restrictive, knowing that chances are we're going to have to change this. That would be my thought.
At least for now.
Yeah, we could certainly revisit it in the future.
Oh,
My
it's
thought
gonna
is,
be
I know.
So leave it alone for now.
Leave it alone.
Okay.
That's not my
So
opinion.
should we take a vote on it?
Yeah.
well, no one seconded my motions.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Very polite.
Sorry, we need to further discussion without a second.
I know.
I do think, Connor, in all honesty, I think that's what it's going to come to. I think basically if they allow an accessory structure to be 5 feet, the state's going to require us to.
And I think part of my motivation for that was, it'd be one thing if we had something in between 5 feet and the primary structure, but our current one, the way this is going to say, like if you're in, say, AA, if it was a primary dwelling unit, like the rear setback would be 50 feet. But now for an accessory structure, it's 65 feet. So it's crazy to me that it's going to be even more restrictive than a single family house. But anyway, we'll take that up in the future.
Oh, we're going to have a lot to pick up.
Thank you.
Hey, are there any other amendments or comments or questions? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Those in favor to close, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is now closed, and I will entertain a motion to approve the ADU bylaw with all of the aforementioned amendments that were.
I'll give it a whirl. I make a motion to approve the proposed amendments to the Town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws as presented and amended tonight relative to the amendments necessary for the town to conform to the new Affordable Homes Act, allowing accessory dwelling units, ADUs by right.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, this will be a roll call. Jim?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And John?
I mean, yes.
Hey, the law has passed.
Thanks, Rob.
Nice job, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Ralph.
I got that there, Rob. Yeah.
Anyone need a short 5-minute recess before we can?
Tom is a yes.
No, I can make it. I'll get out on this one. This is just you guys, right?
No, I could.
It's gonna be quick.
We will take a 5-minute recess and we will return at.
Do you mind?
No, he doesn't.
I don't, yeah.
Okay. As declared by the chair.
It's 6:45 somewhere. Yeah.
Right.
Not here.
Okay.
California.
That was about a long time ago.
Thank you for being patient.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to move out of order to 8E2.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion. Motion. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thank you.
I think I need to open the planning board.
Yes, please.
I'm going to call the 6:45. Oh, sorry. Town of East Long Meadow Planning Board on Tuesday, February 11th. Those in attendance are Russell Denver. Terrell.
Pete Punderson. Bill Fonseca.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank President O'Shea for the invite. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Great. Thank you. No, I'm glad the planning board accepted the invite and was able to attend. Sorry it took so long to get to you on the agenda this evening.
And I would like to also publicly recognize Rob O'Sheila. I think he was a phenomenal hire. He's done a tremendous job. The lines of communication, I've been on the planning board for 8 years. Lines of communication have never been better. He is professional, creative, and I think I just want to publicly recognize him.
I'd like to make a comment about your board, the council. Fantastic.
Great.
Really appreciate all your effort.
Appreciate it.
Good job.
Let's wait till our discussion is done.
I've never been to one of them.
Take that back.
I think it's fantastic. Good comment.
The intent of our joint meeting this evening was to discuss broadly the Centertown District and thoughts between both of our boards and 40R as well, so that we could be in alignment when proposed language comes from that Centertown District Steering Committee, that we'll have an idea of where the voting bodies want to take things or where we might not want to take things. So it doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. I don't know if you have anything else for the impetus.
Boy, that was perfect.
All right. I'd like to lead us off.
I'll start.
Really?
But I'm going to start more with questions. I mean, as the planning board.
Can I just correct a reminder? Mr. Page and I don't argue. We have discussions.
Yes. Civil discourse.
Civil discourse. Thank you. Which then he agrees with me on.
So what I'm looking for is your thoughts on a vision for the Centertown District. I'm assuming, I know, Rob, you're up to date with the Centertown District, what's been going on, the preliminary layout of the area that they've suggested to be included in a Centertown District. And I'm trying to get a general feel as far as going forwards. Do we like the path that we're going down? What do we think about as far as development of that area? What are the overall thoughts so that we can combine them together and basically steer the boards, the town manager and all into what possibly the council or the planning board would actually be looking for and vote on?
Well, Rob is the planning board representative, so I'll have you start.
Yeah. I think the last meeting was pretty productive, right? We brought a lot more of the townspeople in. It's starting to become less hostile, I guess is a word for it, but people are starting to kind of get a feel for that. We're not trying to make a change for the negatives, for the positive, right? I think we all saw a lot of things that happened in this town where some things tried to come in and we're thrilled with them. And we left the doors open because of zoning, right? So the whole premise was when I went and met with Tom, when I started on this was, said the zoning needs to be cleaned up in the town. It's all over the place. There's little pockets of stuff all over. If we could have just a fix, that would solve a lot of problems. Enter all of this. So I think we've really delineated a line that makes sense. People are more comfortable saying there's not going to be a coffee shop next to my house. You're going to tear my place down and rezone it. They understand now it's really the center town and kind of the main streets, and they're just going to have a cleaner zoning overlay on there. The other piece is figuring out what type of buildings are going to go there. What do we want to see? Do you want to see multifamily? Do you want to see duplexes? Do you want to see multi-zone type things? And we kind of left that with some ideas, but I don't think there's anything solid that came out of that yet. So that group needs to come back with some more revisions and we'll go from there. But overall, I think it's going in a better place than it started. I think people are starting to understand it a little bit more. And I mean, I'm satisfied with it. I think it's going in the right way. And there's two different things, right? We're trying to do this overlay and there's this other 40R piece as well with it, but really just talking about the overlay and changing some of the zoning and what we really want to see there.
So I think I've been to 5 of the meetings, several of which they allowed the public to express their opinions. I do believe the center of the town does need zoning. I mean, there's manufacturing next to retail, next to office space. It's all over the board. There's no rhyme or reason. It feels like no rhyme or reason. So I think that certainly does need to be cleaned up. I personally would not mind seeing some creative type of housing there that is compatible with a use that would enhance the economic vitality of it. So I'm thinking higher level, higher income, people who have discretionary monies to be able to spend on hopefully the retail that, you know, generated as part of that, some of the professional services that are kind of generated for that. I've also always thought that, or I do know there's a lot of money available for elder housing in center districts. And it would be great to maybe reach out to, which I have done with Mr. Carr, to look at the potential opportunities of elder housing. You're not adding school-age kids to the school system. The amount of traffic that's generated is substantially less. The monies that are available are associated with recreational activities. You've got the bike path right there. So I'm kind of looking at something, you know, that's not as much discretionary income. But if the concept is to vitalize the area, you need type of housing where people have discretionary income to be able to spend, to kind of rejuvenate it. I think in the previous discussion on accessory dwelling units, I think you know my opinion about the state being involved in anything associated with the town. And, you know, I went today onto their site, and Tom, not to pick on you, but I mean, you talked about the ability to potentially get $600,000 from the state. This is the last meeting that I went to. Put in like 500 units to get that 600,000, or a combination of 200 units, and then you get the $3,000 bonus per unit is what the formula looked like to me. That's a lot to start right there. And some of you don't know me, and for nearly 15 years, I was the president of the Springfield Chamber of Commerce. And in that role, we brought in a group called the Urban Land Institute. And they were developers and planners from, you know them, really distinguished individuals from all over the country. And their focus was not to concentrate affordable housing units into any one specific area because of the economic vitality that I talked about. So I've kind of taken that and used that with me for, you know, since they came into Springfield to do that. I know I'm not comparing Springfield to East Long Meadow or the Rotary, but it did stick with me that if you want more economic vitality, then you can put in housing that people who can afford to live there, you know, have that discretionary disposable income. So 40R, I'm just not a fan of right now because of the tie to the, especially to the tie to the state. So
Can I just one piece of that? And I don't remember saying that, but I was on a roll.
You were.
Double check that because somebody else brought it up.
Yeah.
And if you create a district that can create that many units before they're even built, that is the initial payment.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So, and I also.
That is a fact.
I'm fortunate my family has a home in Fairhaven, Mass, which is right next to New Bedford. That is a community that just adopted 40R, I think in October. Completely different type of district. It's right on the ocean front. So, but it was a battle in that town. Similar size community, like 16,000 people. But they are Bedford is getting the MBTA that will open up in March. So they're kind of expecting people who are priced out of the Boston market to come down. And so that, to me, that kind of fits. But, we'll see. So. Pete?
Well, my comment, I can't say it any better than you, Russ, because you have a lot more experience in that type of market, but I would also agree that any housing down there should be a housing that has a large advantage by having, services available to it, which would be people that have a little more discretionary income, maybe retirement community. And in my mind, it doesn't mix with 40R. I'm 73 years old. I would love to live down in the center of town. Do I want a family of young children living next to me? No. No, our house is empty without our kids. God bless them, they're doing well. But it's nice to have that piece of, plus be able to have a walking community. You can go and get service. If you want some ice cream, it's there. You want a store, it's there. I'm all for that. And I think that's what my view of it is. And so I am not a proponent of 40R. I kind of agree with everything that's being said. My main concern is the restrictions that 40R would place on us. Just like we just went through this ADU and the complexity there, the 40R is going to be the same ball of wax. And once we get involved in it, our hands are tied, just like there with the ADU. We have no choice but to adopt the ADUs. We have an opportunity here to find a path that would satisfy all the needs without entering into the 40R, because to Russ's point, the zoning is a mess all over the place. We can clean all of this up. Now's the opportunity to do it and do it constructively so that everybody's happy. And not be beholden to the state. Correct. That's a major thing in my mind. It's not to be beholden to the state. Been here since 1951, watched it grow. It's a fantastic community with great people, great leadership. And to have the state say, no, we don't agree with your leadership, to me is wrong. And I'm dead set against it. It just takes a lot of decisions out of our hands, unfortunately. I think the intent was good originally, but I can't support it for that. We lose too much control that we have now. We have the opportunity, like I said, we have the opportunity to do something and really make everybody happy and revitalize this area.
We do have the opportunity to accomplish what we want to do.
Right.
Yeah. Which is redo the zoning, make it make sense.
Yeah.
Create some potential housing opportunities, either hopefully elder housing or
whatever.
I sat through, it was last week or the week before, and I saw what Pioneer Valley put up. I think they put 4 examples. So they had like the townhouses. They had absolutely opposed to single family housing in that district. Doesn't make sense at all. Not a duplex guy. I don't think it adds value to what we're trying to do to kind of revitalize the community. But the apartments on the second floor, perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. Fine. That's how I envision it too.
Yeah. If you've ever been to Europe, and I mean, essentially their cities are that.
Yeah.
Right.
They're all second floor apartments or third floor. And we do have buildings that could facilitate that. I just think of the law offices of Frank Fitzgerald. If he ever moves out of there, you can do that. There are other, look at Mario's, that whole building that turned into like a salon on the second floor. That could be housing. The building next to Subway, that has the tarot reader in it. I mean, that's potential too.
Yeah.
And if they're going to be apartments, I mean, those people are going to
have a tendency to be younger with more money. They don't have children yet, or if they do, it's one or two. And you kind of create that vitality that way as well. So I'm open to options, but it's got to make sense.
And not tied, not with our hands tied.
It doesn't make sense to overcrowd the center of town in that capacity at all. I mean, if you redesign the center of town, no matter what you do, there's going to be a rotary. No matter what you have for an intersection, there's going to be a backup at school time. There's going to be a backup somewhere in the intersection when the industrial guard park, industrial area empties out. There's nothing you can do about it. So we're going to have a rotary regardless. It could be set up differently. Ralph Page made a comment the other day with me about the rotary at 6 corners. Works great. You know, a redesign of that would be really nice. So to get 500 units, regardless of the money you get, doesn't make sense for the town at all. And got to think about it one way or another. 330 Chestnut Street is going to get approved somehow in some shape or form. So we have to look at that also.
But I think it's important to point out your viewership is probably much higher than our viewership.
I'm not sure.
The town has indeed taken steps to create the possibility of more housing and different types of housing in town. So, you know, Marilyn and Ralph at least were on the board, and Kathy, you probably were on the board when you did the village district. I don't know what it ended up being called. Yeah.
Yes.
But potentially there were going to be 400 units of housing. And the original concept said townhouses, condos, and some apartments. And I think the town council added the requirement to have 10% of that be affordable. So the town has taken steps to create it. And if my memory serves me correctly, there were at least 2 or 3 other parcels in town that met the 40-acre requirement for an overlay district to be on that. I won't specifically say which ones they are, but so it wasn't just that one site, and it could be done. And so the town has taken affirmative steps to try to alleviate the housing, create different types of housing opportunities for the residents, and put in some affordable. So
I add to his comment. Sure. When we were in the middle of that endeavor, and it took a couple of years by the time we were done, because it was just very important to carve out something that was able to be, meet the needs of the developer as well as protect the town. And many times during that process, we discussed how it would be really nice to create a downscale bylaw of what we did so that we could perhaps do it someplace else within the town or the town center. I don't think any of us is against a mixed use concept.
No.
It's just where and what kind of impact, and the density just is, I think it's incredibly too much.
I applaud the public process that's been used. I really applaud the boundaries that I think you ended up with, because my neighbors on Leicester Street kept coming in and knocking at me about it going all the way up North Main Street. So I think the process has been good. I think it's allowed enough of public input, which I think has been really positive, whether people like it or not, but I think it was important to do that. So.
And to Marilyn, to your point, I agree with everything you said, but let's not lose local control over the way we go about this. And I think that's important to me. I think it's important to everybody.
I know I've had a discussion with Ralph about the boundaries and the boundaries that we came up with, which are pretty much the boundaries that are being looked at. That really does enhance the center town. That really does help East Long Meadow. And Steve's project, he put some buildings up with apartments above it and have all these services at your fingertips. You don't have to drive a lot of places. I think that's a real win for the town.
The other interesting thing, if you just look at the development, so Joe Townsend's building is now going to be a jewelry store. I don't know what's going to be open, but the work they've done there really looks very, very nice. Yeah. The former Acres Power Equipment building, that has come out really, really nice. And so, the jewelry store is one that might need people with more discretionary income. And, those are the kind of things that are building blocks to kind of rejuvenate the center district.
Any other council thoughts?
But we haven't heard from you.
Yeah.
So I've got a question as far as procedure. Let's say we create this zone. It's going to be the Centertown District Zone. What's the thought on the board for residential? I'm going to use Carlin Combustible because the town owns it. It's a pretty good sized lot. Let's say we have the ability to do like a Brownstone Gardens in there or something like that. Would the board be thinking more as of right that people could develop their land like that, or do it under special permit, or a combination of both, or
special permit?
Well, again, let's just say it, and
Special permit. It'd have to be special permit.
Yeah.
I mean, I would.
No, with special permit, and I'm talking to two former chairs of the planning board, which always makes me nervous. But I mean, we can't. So I go back to hearken to the Urban Land Institute, and I'll just kind of give you some Springfield history. So remember Chestnut Towers, downtown Springfield, that was built, and that was built as a quote luxury apartment.
Oh, yeah.
And after 20 years,
I remember that.
After 20 years, the city allowed that to go away. And the city may probably today kind of wish they hadn't done that. And it's no longer that way. And you have a concentration. And I'm not casting aspersions on anybody, socioeconomic, nothing, but it's demographics. It's actual demographics about the disposable income to revitalize an area. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at. But you know, that was a big mistake that the city made on something like that. The elder housing concept is really interesting. I mean, I'm on the board of Brownstone Gardens, as is Maryland. Well-maintained, very little issues associated with that. The property management has been in place for 50 years this year.
Yeah.
It's a great story. You know, the amount of traffic that goes in and out is very minimal. Obviously, there are no school-age children in there. So it's not a kind of I'm not going to call it a burden, but there's not an additional amount of students, you know, in the school system. Very creative. And you don't necessarily want to add that much more traffic at that location if we're talking Carlin Combustion. So that's the roadway to the school.
You know, it was Brownstone Gardens that I think it demonstrated to us when we were looking at the mixed-use village district and incorporating 10% affordable housing in that development, that Brownstone has low to moderate affordable market units in their facility. And it's integrated in such a way that all the units are the same. The amenities are the same. You don't know if your next door neighbor pays X amount or X amount. It just works really well. And that was the intent with the bylaw that we created, that it would be such that there would be no affordable wing where everyone who couldn't pay certain prices were, you know, settled over there. It was that all of these units, 10% would be 10 out of every 100 would be integrated in a way that everyone was living in harmony with one another. And so I you know, it can work.
Well, it also works well because there's an age restriction. So you may have, you know, a difference in affordability for people, but the same age restriction is there. So you're getting the same type of situation. I mean, whether it's low income or higher income, you're getting the same type of situation in each place.
I point to the one I've always continued to go back was the new spot in Wilbraham, just south of Wilbraham Munson. Developer did a great job with that. It's a pizza shop, I think a brewery, and 4 or 5 apartments upstairs.
Oh, yeah.
It's completely filled, it rented out, and it looks great, right? And it'd be nice to have more of those pop up in town. We could have a few people upstairs and have some small businesses underneath that make it look a little more vibrant, right? And I think a few of those would go a long way. And that's kind of what I envision as we make these changes and going through those.
And if you're adding different housing types, I think you mentioned this the last meeting, you could have an existing building that's vacant and put in and allow the overlay district would allow apartments to potentially go into a currently vacant building. Wanted to increase the property tax from that. So you take an empty building, you fill it, and you kind of create more housing, but you also create more tax revenue. You know, we do have some legacy industrial buildings, you know, in the center district. You know, they've been sitting empty for quite some time. And if you can retrofit those and use them, now you can't. But if you change to allow different types of housing, then you could. So that, to me, that makes sense. So we're doing all the talking. We want to hear. Yeah. We don't want to send you something and then you go, no, 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 no.
So I know a couple times you've used the terminology an overlay district. I will be straight out. I'm not for an overlay district. An overlay district goes over the top of what's existing, which would mean that you can continue to use the underlying district. And I think that's one of the things we need to get rid of. We need to remove the industrial. We don't need to leave that and then put this over it. My thought would be we create a base district, Centertown district, and then choose, you know, businesses that we can allow in, commercial that we can allow in, whatever we want in there, whether it, you know, certain residential, other residential, and create a whole district for that.
I agree.
Yeah. You can be assured that anything I vote on will allow banks in the center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do appreciate that.
To add, Rob,
I believe they would be grandfathered in anyways.
I'm sitting here and it's like deja vu. It was many years ago on the planning board where we worked with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to craft out a center district, a town district. And then there was a subcategory. So you would have the town district and then sort of a blend of certain uses, and then you'd have your residential development. Now, our zoning is such that, you know, we have our business district and we have residents right behind. So the uses, we were trying to change, to perhaps add some additional uses to the districts that weren't already there, thinking that they would be comparable or okay for where we were going to put them. The town just erupted into, you know, great concern. They were losing their protection. They wanted to be behind the commercial district. They didn't want us to change any uses. So the message I'm saying is whatever we do for the center district, whatever uses, you have to be sensitive to what's next door, because you guys live right on top of one another. And I know when you live in a district that's abuts a business zone, you have to accept more nuisance issues. But on the reverse, if the town is going to make some changes, we need to make sure we don't put a rather active, noisy use that abuts the residential zone.
No landscapers.
Our wash.
Our wash, right?
Drive through.
So through the chair.
Sure.
So I'm brought back to years ago, and I'm going way back 15, 20 years now, when we had annual town meeting and a smart growth plan was brought forwards to the town. I was at that town meeting. And if you want to talk about angry citizens, I can only think of one other time, and we won't go into that they were even more angry. But they overwhelmingly, it was, I'm going to guess it had to be 80% voted no. I mean, you couldn't hear anything other than the screaming of no. I think there was one wise guy that said yes, and it was probably me. But so our town is, at least in the past, and again, over time things change, but our town's really been, hey, let's stay away from what the state calls smart growth and all. Let's do it ourselves. We can make this better. And I sort of take that going forwards. I listened tonight to the speakers that came up, and I've been at the meetings. I've yet to hear someone stand up in the audience and say, you guys are all wrong. I think we should go this way. I think we have to take that into consideration and move forwards, basically setting that aside and saying, hey, let's do this ourselves. Let's create our district. Let's create what we want in it. let's put in our safeguards and go from there.
I mean, there are some interesting spots in the district.
Yeah.
So I think of right next to Health Tracks. So kind of between Health Tracks and the backside of Brew Practitioners.
Yep.
There's that gigantic area right there.
Huge
It's
parking
just
lot.
Huge. Do you want duplexes there?
No.
No. But do you want to kind of create a nice enclave with maybe condos or townhouses? That might be really interesting. Carlin is obviously the other example. But I mean, there are pockets where you could actually do something very creative with different types of housing.
And keep in mind, a lot of that is zoned unfavorably to what our vision looks like.
Correct.
And that's like first and foremost what we are trying to fix.
But I think we started the conversation with zoning's a mess and we need to start there. And that's where we start. And we go
I
from.
did a lot.
Yeah. But
It's a good thing we're going to have a committee to look at it. Huh?
Yeah, sure. I want to just elucidate some point that developed over the conversation around the ADU bylaw and the reality that this is a town that has the potential to see a surprising number of permits taken out, over time. And that strikes me as an unintended attempt to force density on. We can't control which streets. I'll go back to what you said, Russell. 6 parcels on your street could, if circumstances go that way, choose to place, a ADU. That's kind of like forced density or subtle density imposition without any control over us. So in that light, since we don't have control there, to me, it makes sense that we need to maintain local control over what we want this center district to be.
Good point.
Absolutely.
no, I mean, I think we're all on the same page here. It's how do we get there? I think that's the next, how do we get there? I think it starts with, I'll go back to what, Rob and Russ are talking about and start with the zoning and let's look at that. We'll do a deep dive there and go forward.
Industrial zoning has to go.
Yep.
First and foremost.
Yep.
But I was shocked at that statistic that I think that said that East Long Meadow had the fewest number of new housing permits in the last 20 years. That come from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
I did.
That ring a
I
bell?
don't remember hearing that.
Oh,
now.
I didn't notice.
all right, forget it.
Read it on the air. It's probably
I wouldn't be surprised because the most common type of residential construction we have is single family homes.
Good point.
They're not as common anymore because they're really expensive and people who are younger. So I'm almost 30. My demographic can't afford to live in those homes at all.
A child.
So
Complimentary though.
you have to be a homeowner in a different town. So I just think that, creating housing opportunities for younger people is how you bring young people into town. Because right now they're being driven away or remaining with their parents. So I think that's something that the town needs to address through zoning by allowing for multiple types of housing to become possible.
I would echo that sentiment because I'm a prime example. I grew up in town, born and raised here, but I can't afford to purchase a home in my own hometown. So if I was to look at something, I'd probably be leaving. And that's pretty sad because we don't allow more dense housing construction anywhere in the town.
And Connor on the same page with.
But there are parts of East Long Meadow where it's single family housing and the density is it's pretty dense. So the whole northern section from Springfield, you go all the way up to Heritage Park and hang a left on, I can't remember that street. Dearborn. And both sides of Dearborn, John,
That whole area.
Helen, Gate.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, those are very, very tight. They're smaller. They're not the mega mansions that, we only hear about and Ralph lives in. But so I mean, no.
There are, but I would
That,
say
those
that
are pockets.
There
That
are
was all
pockets. There are
post-war Kitty,
pockets. There are
Kitty
pockets.
project,
There
KB
are
projects.
pockets.
Yeah, there are pockets.
And there's a lot of them. There's a
Yeah,
lot
there
of
are.
streets.
Not just the north end, it's scattered throughout the town.
Or Sears House. You go
there
by.
are, but I think we're
Yes.
missing that mix of housing types because when you just have those pockets,
Yeah.
the people, once they acquire it, they're not leaving. And
Well, you hope they don't leave. Let's put it that way.
well, you do and you don't.
Right.
Because then that means that other people can't either enter your community or stay in your.
Yeah, you just let us start at home. Yeah.
It would be really good if the state had a program where they would provide money to developers to develop smaller housing and make it more affordable for the developer to build those type of things. So
it like incentivize the developers
to
to,
build smaller homes that
Moderate.
are going to be more
Right.
affordable. And then you build 50 of them and the state comes in and kind of supplements that to the developer. But
Texas, it's a 40B.
yeah,
Well, 40B, you can do the deeded
Yeah.
affordable housing,
Yeah.
which is.
Yeah, but I don't want to be tied to that.
Yeah, but it's a different process.
It is a different process.
Those processes exist though. That's all I want to say.
Through the chair, you know, what I think Connor's echoing, and I feel like we both represent that, is if the town wants to grow and continue, you know, I think the last 50 or 60 years, we kind of filled the town with a lot of single family homes. And the reality is that our generation just can't all afford single family homes. That might not be the most realistic pathway. So I think we want to retain, you know, I grew up here my entire life. You grew up here your entire life. Like a lot of us want to stay here. And then a lot of our parents or grandparents want to stay here, but they don't want to take care of some gargantuan single family home.
I'm right there right now.
Yeah.
You know, they want to, you know, be able to downsize, but stay in the area that they feel most comfortable with. Their friends are here, their family are here. They built a life here. So I think that we shouldn't lose sight when creating this district. And I think we should do something, because if we don't, then the state will, you know, kick the door in and continue to do these things, because we have a lack of housing stock in the state right now. We're not growing compared to other states in the country. And it's going to have a long-term economic impact if we don't try to at least look to turbocharge that. But I also agree, local control is important, because I think what we do well here is we have really good local control. So we shouldn't lose that at all. So I don't think we should necessarily get the state in here, but I think we should really definitely make sure we leave here creating something instead of nothing.
I think also density has a benefit and a downside to it. So the downside is obviously congestion if it's too dense. But if you find just the right level, you can make something work. But on the other side, you're going to build housing that you can almost guarantee is going to be filled. A single family home is harder to fill or sell right now than a multifamily. Multifamilies, you usually have wait lists for a lot of places. You have people competing for rentals. That's very common. A developer sees multifamilies as very profitable, way more profitable than a single family home. If you allowed for any sort of multifamily, that could be 4 or more units. That's the definition of multifamily. You would see a lot more of them if it was allowed in a specific zone. I can tell you right now, there's going to be developers coming in to take advantage of any sort of vacant property to build mixed use multifamily buildings.
I think the other part of that too is whether we like it or not, East Long Meadow is a suburban community.
Yeah.
Suburban means that we're next to an urban community. And so we can't stop the growth. We're going to continue growing whether we like it or not. And we need to utilize the remaining space that we have left most efficiently and I think most densely, because otherwise we're going to end up like our neighboring community, Long Meadow, that is entirely built out. There's nowhere else to put another subdivision. And then the town budget is going to
have the highest tax rate.
That's why the original concept at 330 Chestnut would have solved a lot of this. You would have added 400 plus units of additional housing for younger individuals and for those people like soon to be myself who would want to sell their house and go into something that's being maintained by someone else. I mean, it was really kind of a home run, and it's unfortunate it never came to fruition.
But to your point, Connor, to your point, John, about affordability, I think ADUs are going to take care of a whole heck of a lot of problems for people, you know, to come here and afford to live here, if that's done properly.
These also just say through the chairs, like, I want to try to avoid having a situation where we're pricing more people out of this community. I think we take pride in, you know, we're a working class community, or I think that's what our roots have always been. So obviously housing prices have gone up significantly in every part of the country, but trying to sort of retain and not lose so many families or so many people that continue to stay, but may not necessarily be in that income bracket or have as much of that disposable income that others might.
And the good thing about the ADUs, I know we just passed it tonight, so it's brand new law. But I've seen other communities where they're allowed, you know, you have grandma and grandpa, they've lived here for 50 years. Now they can downsize into a smaller apartment that's either attached or not attached to the house. And their grandkids and kids can live in the regular house. And then they can kind of do a cost share mechanism. You know, they can also downsize and rent out the big house so they can afford to pay the taxes because they may have already paid off the mortgage a certain number of years ago. So it allows for more flexibility on allowing people to age in place, which is how you keep those community members in town and allow for other people to come in as well. So it's just those small zoning mechanisms that really help guide the path towards increasing the housing stock.
And I think mixing the uses in the center is important because not only do we need a lot more housing in town, but we want uses from a commercial perspective that are compatible and really just economically viable. Like the idea that anyone would think that you're going to get like these small boutique shops just is not going to happen because no one shops there. They wouldn't really be able to sustain business. We're lucky that we have a few, but to think that we're going to add more is, I think, unrealistic. I think something that would thrive though is adding, say, more restaurants or coffee shops. That
Services.
Yeah.
You can take your phone and buy anything you want in 5 seconds.
A lot of us, myself included, if you think you want to go out to eat, I don't really go to the center of East Long Meadow. I go to any other community around here except my own town. Because there's really not a lot of options. There's a couple of restaurants and you don't want to eat at the same one every single time.
Especially if you attach housing to that, the mixed use building is perfect because you have more customers that can go to these places. A lot of people would rather walk down the street to go get food than to have to drive there. It would make sense to me to go out my front door and boom, there's a little retail store, or boom, there's a bar that I can watch a game at or something. That's definitely more desirable than just being isolated away from these commercial areas.
And I don't know why I do this, but I read the Facebook forums for East Long Meadow. That's on it just blows my mind. That's just so incredibly inaccurate.
All the problems.
Yeah. But if you kind of just look at the district that you've kind of outlined, I don't know how much you can put in there for new housing. I mean, I have been involved in a lot of development over the years, as have you. And if you could put in 100 units, you might be doing yeoman's work. And they all wouldn't be situated in one location, except if you took down the Carlin building, you might. But I mean, there are limited opportunities for a lot of housing.
Yeah.
So those people who are going crazy over the amount of traffic it's going to create and the congestion.
Yeah.
I hate to burst anyone's bubble, but East Long Meadow doesn't have a rush hour. They have a rush minute.
Yeah.
And the rush minute is Shaker Road between 3:30 and 4:30 going through the Rotary, after school on Chestnut Street, and maybe an occasional coming in off of Elm Street.
Maple.
Yeah. So,
And to your point, the cost to convert these is not simple. You don't just throw a second floor onto a commercial building.
Yeah.
It's
gotta be,
it's there.
able to
You-
the bottom has to be built sufficiently to support the top.
Right. So there's opportunities, but it's not going to be widespread just immediately.
We definitely have to get creative with this.
I guess we can be a little more vocal because we're all appointed. You're all elected.
Can you? Can you?
Back here.
Good luck.
Yeah.
That was some
You
very
feel the
smart,
book coming
some
down.
very
Yeah.
smart people were on the charter commission that decided to make the planning board appointed rather than elected.
Yeah.
So that the appointed board can make, some really difficult decisions about, rather than worrying about that and the other thing. So
Yeah. There's a big difference.
big difference. So. Mr. Lyden, we haven't heard from you.
You said it all.
He made his comments earlier that were very succinct.
I think a lot of what it's a flexibility. And, watching where I'm at in my life cycle currently to my parents and helping them kind of downsize, there's very limited options. They came from Springfield, they're out in Wilbraham now. There's very limited options for them to really follow up on. So promoting something that helps turn the housing stock over, get you guys some housing, get you guys out of your housing and, more of a natural life cycle to our housing stock and not not holding, people not holding on to homes for 50, 60, 70 years. I think that's really what I'm hearing there. And again, the local control thing that's major to me.
Huge.
And it's a completely different subject, but as you guys know, with the state, when I was sitting in the mayor's office in Springfield and, just one day they decided to cut the Quinn bill. We're on the hook for millions of dollars at that point in time. When the state wants to tighten their belt, they'll tighten it and they'll throw you right under the bus without a concern.
Oh, yeah.
Maintain that local control is a huge, huge factor to me in this whole process.
What are we doing? We're
I
good.
feel like we're all kind of on the.
Well, I mean, I don't want to state the obvious, but we are in a 40R feasibility process, meaning does 40R make sense for East Long Meadow? The first meeting we said if it didn't, then we'd figure out what did. So I still think there's a lot of misinformation about 40R in this whole process that I guess I've accepted a certain amount of, because the Facebook forums and all this stuff, once the information gets out, it's hard to get back. The point being, the development downtown was always a main goal. The 40R was a feasibility grant study that a lot of people have put a lot of time in to try to educate on what 40R is. If this body and this body is saying that that's not something that you're going to consider, well, then the feasibility of 40R doesn't appear to be too good. But we're in the middle of a process in which, Rebecca and the steering committee have been sort of walking down this path that was laid out by the grant process. And, I sort of, at this point, as we're looking back, if sort of we had known that this was the consensus of both the next boards from the steering committee, that 40R was not going to be even considered, there really was no need to go down this grant feasibility avenue. And maybe you have this opinion because we went down this avenue. Either way, we seem to be at a point where is it time to break off from 40R? Like, is that something that everyone's saying? It sounds to me like that's what we're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
So through the chair. So Tom, my understanding was we created a center town district steering committee.
Mm-hmm.
That we were looking at a center town district and a center town district bylaw.
Correct.
With that being said, we were to take a look at 40R and see if that was appropriate or not.
Yep.
Because at one of the first meetings of the Centertown District, Pioneer Valley Planning said, well, let us know if you guys aren't even interested, we'll just do a bylaw based on the Centertown District. That's what you're hiring us for.
Right.
You're hiring us to write a bylaw.
Right.
And this seems to have morphed into more of a 40R zone district instead of, hey, let's take a look at a Centertown district and see what's good, what's bad. Maybe 40R would work, maybe it won't. And it's just completely flipped over to everything we do is geared towards 40R.
Right. But we haven't written a sentence yet. So
I did 40-foot heights.
No, my point is the process was to write the bylaw, of course. And this was always my number one goal before I even knew we had this grant for 40R, right? This is a good idea. Right? I mean, I think.
So before we wrote anything, that's one of the reasons I asked for this meeting.
Okay.
Because I don't want to go ahead and write a bylaw and then say, doesn't work. Now let's move on to this. Where at least this here, we've heard a lot of discussion on what we like and all. And from what I'm hearing is, let's move away from the 40R requirements, that we can take some of it, as far as, maybe some of the densities work and all, and we can create our own bylaw with it, but let's not apply to the state for a 40R.
So, okay. So we were always creating our own bylaw, like you said. We were always going to do that. The only state involvement is we send an application in with the bylaw and they say you're eligible or you're not eligible. That's it. That's
So
literally it.
Sounds easy, except for when you they can go to 40R. I mean, I can read through this. You're allowed to change your own zoning, but you have to get approval from the state when you go to change it if it touches any of the smart zone. I mean,
You have to check your eligibility. They can't stop us from changing our laws. That's in our charter. They can say you're not eligible anymore because you don't meet the requirements.
You're not eligible and we're going to take the money back. So, hey, you've done all of this.
Exactly. Right.
So I think our point is.
That's what I'm saying.
The hell with the money. Let's create our own bylaw, our own zone and move forwards. That's my thought. And again, I don't mean to put words in anyone's mouth except yours, Jim.
You know where I am.
You've already said it.
Yeah.
We already know.
Exactly.
But we all agree on, we need new zoning.
Yeah.
Right. Want to revitalize the center. We realize that there are various options to get there. The presentation from the steering committee 2 weeks ago when they started to put up different housing types, I thought that was really fascinating. And the discussion that your committee had was really, really interesting. And so loved that public process, but let's just use that and move forward.
Through the chair, I had sort of a question while we're just still talking about now 40R. Was there, obviously, I don't think we clearly all pretty much generally agree that having state control would not be the best idea, but was there elements at all in the 40R that really stood out to you as maybe good ideas that they sort of laid out? So not necessarily adopting 40R and adopting the money, but maybe adopting certain provisions that you guys felt. Or was it all?
We didn't
even get to any of them yet.
Yeah. I mean, the conversation really didn't go much further than that first couple of meetings. And then it really, from my gathering, most of these last public meetings and steering committee meetings we've had have all been directed around where that overlay is going to fall, right? And what's going to be in that zone? What types do we want to classify in that zone? So we have a list of them. So it really is steered away, the steering committee, from 40R, from my understanding. It really started at the beginning of it. Again, maybe it was some misinformation and we didn't get too much deeper into it. There was a payout that the town gets if we promote more of this type of housing, helps with affordable housing, which again, sent socials wild when they heard that. But it was more of just like taking the ratio of incomes, and it really wasn't what we had envisioned that. But it was just having a housing, like Connor had said, and Jonathan said, that people can actually get into some housing, right? Because it's very expensive out there. And we felt taking the money and being bound by some of the rules by the state, which could walk away at any time or put more on us, it was more beneficial to just do this on our own, create this overlay and see how that walked away. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but that's how it felt as we progressed through the meetings.
And the thing that I found very interesting, and I don't know if it's specifically tied to 40R, but your committee started talking about sub-districts within the, I thought that was fascinating. Because if you look at your boundaries, Shaker Road is vastly different than, around Center Square, And so that was really interesting to me. I don't know if that's part of 40R, but that was a really fascinating thing to continue to pursue.
Just from a directional standpoint, so that we're still being productive. Because we haven't talked about any of the components of 40R other than the fact that it's a state law and we're not interested in that, we can still explore some of the portions of it, i.e. density and affordable, kind of like the mixed use village that's already on the books, which you guys have 12 units an acre and 10% affordable. Is that right?
10% affordable.
I'm just, you see what I'm saying? I think we're
and again, I think 10%, the reason we chose that for the mixed use village was based on 40B. You're trying to get it to at least a 10% in town of affordable housing.
Yeah.
So we decided, hey, if we're going to allow this many housing units in, guess what? We shouldn't go backwards. We should at least get to 10%.
So that's the part of the process that we were almost to, which was if 10% was all that anybody had any appetite for, that's not 40R eligible. End of conversation.
Right.
But we just never even got to that point in the process because, hey, listen, I'm happy about how how Rebecca and the steering committee did all these things. I mean, we had more public input than I think anybody ever thought we were going to have, which is great because that was the point, was to build a center town district the way the town wanted to. And if 40R is not it, if we're never going to get to a 20% affordable, 40R is not an option. It's just not. That's one of the main components, is a 20% affordability. And if nobody has any appetite based on our current zoning and or what we think now, conversation's over. And you know, we got a little worked up before we even got to a point. And that's fine. Because the feasibility was the point. It was literally in the grant. We're just trying to see if this was even feasible.
One important thing that I resonated with was you actually explained the affordable housing. Do you remember when you did that?
Right. So
that equation stood out to me as like
80% of market value.
Yeah, but you kept saying up to 62,500.
Your income.
No, your income.
Right. And you kept saying up to. So that leaves a lot. Up to.
No, not, I'm sorry. I said up to. No, that 80% income is 80,000. That comes out to is maybe what I said.
That got a lot of people kind of.
Yeah. So from 0 to 62 and you're good? So then I misspoke and I apologize because that's not what I meant. 80%.
You know where I'm going here?
$62,000 a year.
So if you're looking at your income.
Yeah.
What it's saying is you can't make above 62,000.
Right.
So if you make 56,000 a year, you're eligible to get into that. So some people only make 30. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be able to afford one.
Yeah,
That's at 80%.
right. That's the other right.
Nothing personal, but I know what the market is on these.
No, and
I saw what the town assessed my house at.
That was one of the things we were trying to dispel, was the low income housing phrase, which was never a part of this at all, ever, ever, ever. And who said that? Oh, that's not the farthest neighborhood we heard was getting demolished by this center town district. But so that, again, that's fine. We're just looking for direction now, because if 40R is out, that means most likely a lot of the components were a little bit too much of an ask. But again, we didn't even get there. So if we're going to do some work now and build a center town district without 40R, what does that look like? I think I agree with you about the overlay thing 100%. It needs to be a zone change.
Exactly.
And everybody's agreeing with Ralph this year.
I'm having a good night here.
So then we'll just continue the conversation about what those requirements will look like. Right? I mean,
so from what I heard, it sounds like a mixed use. Mixed use is a great idea. Right. If we can mix business and uses together, it sounds great. From what I could understand, it sounded like single family dwellings in the center of town. We're not so much for that.
Duplexes.
Not trying to create those. We got plenty of those.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I think that's something that we can look at that district and say, hey, let's look more towards a mixed use. Allow that. I don't know how you feel as far as condos, apartments, as long as the area is large enough to be able to put some in. I think those are things to consider.
With appropriate restrictions like height, that type of thing. You don't want a 20-unit apartment block in the center.
Square brick.
I don't think that. I don't think anybody. I haven't heard anybody say, "Yeah, let's do that. That's wonderful." But I think your board, your committee started talking about a height restriction at your last meeting.
Yeah,
and it would essentially, be 3 floors.
Similar to the zone that's already there,
and similar to other property heights that it surrounds. Something.
To be fair, you kind of the days of the square breakability are behind us, and we're going to do design review for this district. So
someone want to volunteer for that?
We got an opening.
I think the design review aspect of that is huge, because that gives the town the ability to say that's ugly, that's not ugly. Make this conform to what the district the character and the design of the district entails. So I think that's a big proponent of this.
I would love to see the planning board take a look at the district and say, this is sort of what we want. I mean, I'm thinking, peaked roofs are, I go down to the Cape and you drive down and the buildings look the same. I'm not necessarily saying that's what we need, but I'm just saying to come up with something along with the design review and say, hey, over the next 30 years, this is what we'd like our center to start looking like. I mean, I think we did that once before. That's how we had the Z brick and all put in. And then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, whatever. Those people are no longer on the board. See you later.
I don't know if the state still has the tax increment financing referred to as a TIF.
Yes.
If you agree, they have TIF for housing.
Yeah.
That type of thing. So it's an incentive to the developer. Yeah. But
Always been for commercial buildings.
Yeah.
Large commercial buildings.
So where are we going from here?
Now that it's 9.
So through the chair, do you want me to make a motion?
If you'd like to, sure.
If someone would like to second, it's up to you guys, but so I would move that the town council instruct the town manager not to seek eligibility for 40R, instead to instruct all employees and interested parties to proceed with the creation of a center town district and related bylaw without the 40R considerations, to do it on our own.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Passes.
So that gives you direction.
Thank you.
I like the conversation. I greatly appreciate you guys coming in.
Thank you.
Your thoughts.
We're going to need more input too.
Absolutely.
And so from our last meeting, Pioneer Valley is going away and coming back with some design things, types and things that can go in there. So they're going to have.
And we're exactly.
So instead of creating the wheel.
It's still a huge bylaw to create.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, all the heights, dimensions and all of that stuff. It's still the same.
I'm a commissioner.
Yeah.
As your chair of the planning subcommittee.
Yes.
So I would be happy to come and meet with your committee on issues that come from the planning board to you.
Great. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Just become best friends.
Need to close your.
You guys have to close your meeting.
I'll attend.
Okay.
You guys have to.
Do you need to close?
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Thanks. Efficient.
Thanks, planning board
Thanks.
and CPC and Centertown District Committee members. Yeah, you guys wear a lot of hats. I like it. Oh, yeah. Appreciate it.
Our chair. I got you. Former planning board chair at the table.
I move that we.
Going now.
Motion's been.
No, I'm gonna eat something.
Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah.
Passes. So we are to licensing matters. We have the approval of a one-day liquor license for the Masonic Temple. For a motion.
I make a motion to approve a liquor license for Masonic Temple of Long Meadow, 43 Chestnut Street on February 28, 2025, from 5 to 11 p.m. for an East Long Meadow High School lacrosse fundraiser.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yes. Jeannie, what is this fundraiser? What are they doing?
It's high school lacrosse or something.
Yeah, well, I understand. I mean, that's who's putting it on. What's the fundraiser?
The dinner?
Is it a dinner?
I don't know. It doesn't stand the application. Can find out.
Can we find out?
Sure.
I would love, well, it would have been nice to put it out there and say, hey, this is a dinner as a fundraiser. I'm assuming that's what it was, but it doesn't say any of it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Fine.
Well, we swung across and alcohol being served. Other than that, I'm good to go.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, under financial matters, we have approved the appropriation from water retained earnings for the water meter modules.
I make a motion to appropriate from water retained earnings, $139,883.95 to fund project 3420011 water meter modules.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Have approval of our January 28th minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the January 28th, 2025 open session minutes.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Under old business, we have an update on the proposed bylaw amendment regarding recreational marijuana. So from that, we had, at our last meeting that we talked about that a few months ago, we had asked our town manager to discuss that with our town attorney to see what the proper procedure is for moving forward with that. Because if you recall, previously, the voters of East Long Meadow at the ballot box had to enact that prohibition that state law allowed us to. There was a question as to whether the council could just do that on its own, just as a normal law change procedure, whether we also had to go back to the ballot box to ask the voters to decide on that question. And after discussing that with the town attorney, Jesse, he had concurred that East Long Meadow would need voter approval via a ballot question in order to adopt any change to that proposed bylaw. But I wanted to remove the prohibition on that. Given that, I mean, it's up to the council on how we want to proceed. My thought is, unless anyone is passionate in suggesting making a motion to propose a ballot question language, that this should follow the charter's process for a citizen's petition.
Petition, I agree.
So I agree with that, but through the chair,
Sure.
at least I personally was never going to limit this to only one individual in town. And our attorney basically said that if we allowed at least 20% of what we have for liquor licenses, then it may not fall under this, but I still, whether we allow 3, whether we allow 5, I still think it's the voters that have to make the decision. And if the applicant wanted to go forwards with starting that process and trying to get that done, I have no issue with that, but
And through the chair, I'll just know, not only did the town overwhelmingly reject having marijuana shops in the town, but we also voted a year prior to that against the legalization of it, of marijuana. Obviously, that's maybe changed and public opinion in the town has changed, but I think it would be a very good idea to at least see what the voters, if the voters want to go in a different direction, you know, that's what the voters decide to do, but I think it should completely rest with them. And then we sort of follow what the voters want.
Now, I know the petitioner is here. I don't know if you have any further comments or anything you want to say. Okay.
We're going to discuss this. He hasn't open the public opinion. We're trying to follow the right ways. Follow all your rules. Hi, we're Jeffrey and Christina Brooks from 56 Woodbridge Drive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging tight, guys.
Yeah. Thing. We know everything about it except for where we're actually going with it.
Same.
After you sometime.
I think we knew last coming up that it was gonna have to come to a vote to kind of prepare ourselves on what that would look like. Would we have to go petition, or is there a vote coming up that could be added, or what your suggestion is? See now how the East Long Meadow community felt, you know, on voting on legalizing, you know, a dispensary in the town. We do know that the last time it was voted was very early 2016. Everyone was really scared on what that would feel like for their community. I think now there's a lot of dispensaries opened up in similar locations, seeing that it's successful. It can be done in a nice, classy boutique feel to not, you know, make our town feel or look a certain way. And we're very open to, you know, feedback or information if it gets to that process. But really, you know, happy that you guys took that into consideration, looked into it, and now for us, what would, you know, further steps into engaging with the community to get it on a ballot or moving forward.
Great. Yeah, so I think in terms of next steps, then the council won't take any further action on it. But if you look at the East Meadow Home Rule Charter, which is on the town's website, there's an E-code link that lists that. I think it's attachment A. There's one of the last few pages talks about like different citizen petitions, and there's ways to petition the council to do something. But I think in your case, you would have to have a ballot question
I think you're right.
That requires a certain number of signatures from registered voters in town to get a question on the next town election ballot. There is a cutoff period, and I don't recall, Jeannie, if you know when that would be in terms of when that would have to be submitted to make it on our June 2025 ballot. Otherwise,
5 weeks before, the language would have to be in place and reviewed.
5 weeks before, and when would that ballot vote be coming?
It's
You said June, end of 25, sorry.
It's Article 8 of the charter lays it out.
We better get started.
Yes.
That's where we are very, yeah.
So
Back to see me at Big Y, everyone.
I would just suggest, and sorry about this, Jeannie, but that you get together with Jeannie just to go through, because when you look at the citizen mechanisms, it's confusing. And this way here, you'll be in the right process instead of thinking you are and then showing up and we going, how you gonna do this? So
Appreciate that, thank you.
Jeannie's wonderful.
So I could shoot you guys an email.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
Good to go.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys
very much.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're half done.
We're good.
Okay, then we already talked about.
Yeah, see you guys.
Oh, so our next.
Good night.
Okay, our next one
Bye, Marilyn.
is discussion of proposed amendment
Yeah.
regarding multiple bylaw changes simultaneously. So Ralph at our last meeting that we talked about this had put together a draft of language for us to consider. And I know at that time I had mentioned whether it was worth us to consider broadening that, not just to this particular review process, but to anything. But I've thought about that more, and I think it would complicate this process at that time. It may still be an interesting idea, but I don't know if now's the right time to consider that.
So with that being said, I went back through and looked at some of my notes when we did the E code, and our attorney interpreted our language when we did it to categorize one subject. And he interpreted that to mean that it's not just one item, that you could group things together, which may help quite a bit, especially when we're doing zoning and stuff, that we can group a few together in the future. For other things. Exactly.
Okay, that
And
clarifies.
I think we did that when we did the site plan review and the parking plan, because they were all in the same portion of the zoning bylaws. So we were able to group them all together, which is a lot better than, hey, we're going to change this one word. That's a public hearing. This word, that's a public hearing. Yeah.
So then what I had done, I looked at the existing Article 2, Section 2-6, where it mentioned the whole process in the charter. And I wasn't sure if your proposed change was just to add that paragraph or if it was to change the existing paragraph that we had. So in my confusion around that, I took the existing paragraph that we had and I redlined it and blue underlined it to show what currently was there in the charter versus what Ralph's proposed changes were if we were to just modify what was already there for simplification purposes. But I don't know if.
So I thought for a ballot question, it may be easier to understand that we remove the article in its entirety and replace. Yes. As the ballot question. I was surprised when I saw this and I chuckled because I had this all done. Well, someone just spent a long time. But I do appreciate it because it allows everyone here to see, the word changes. It basically is just saying, changing the time frame that once every 10 years is, and once every 10 years, hey, when we do all of this, let's be able to do it all as a whole.
Right. And I think Jeannie had caught it when I sent this, but I was thinking about it more since we talked about it. How in your proposed changes, we removed like codification or codification process and changed it to just like the word changes. I think that makes sense to me, though, that we still had codification in one of the places because there is a definition in the charter that allows for codification just to like renumber and reformat things, and I don't think we want to prohibit that in our.
And it starts the paragraph, the codification phrase too. So the very first line.
Oh, yeah, like notwithstanding the above, the reviewer
I
codification, yeah.
saw that later.
Yep. Yeah, so I think that still allows us to either just do codification or changes or both, depending on whatever we have that review process entail every 10 years. So I guess with that said, it's up to us if we want to proceed.
So just out of curiosity again, the language that I wrote up, was that accurate? Keeping in the codification?
Yeah.
Or was there a change to?
No, I think what you had written was good because I think
I'm winning again.
Yeah, the red and blue line, unless I missed something in translating it, I think it captured the different conditions in there.
Awesome.
At least it made sense to me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if that's.
I think the next thing we need to do is forward it to our town attorney.
Right. Once Jesse reviews it, then you can vote on the language to be placed on the ballot.
Right. Right.
And it goes to the AG. They have 4 weeks to review it.
Getting tight.
And then it would be ready for at least 5 weeks before the election. So we still have time.
So then I would entertain a motion to refer this to the town attorney for their review.
So
moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. On to the next.
I think I got
This is awesome.
Man.
Great.
Okay. So then under new business, we have accepting the appointment of the deputy fire chief, Christopher Beecher, as the new fire chief. If you would like to come forward.
Patience.
I know, huh?
We were testing you. You passed.
Very patient.
Otherwise, I was gonna have to stand in front of Big Y, I think.
I don't know if you just want to.
Chris is funny. It's not on his resume, but it's pretty funny.
I don't know if just for the public's benefit, if you just want to provide a brief background of yourself and how you got to this point.
Sure. So my name is Chris Beecher. I'm currently serving as a deputy fire chief in town. I've lived in town since 2003. I married into the town. My wife's a lifelong resident. I've been with the fire department for 19 years. The first 8 were the call member, and then the last 11 in the career department. And the last 2 I've served as a deputy fire chief. And I'm excited to take that next step, lead this department.
So are we.
Absolutely honored to be a part of it. So.
And Tom, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I don't know that I have enough time to say enough about Chris. He's pretty much the embodiment of a leader and somebody that you'd want as a teammate. And I there's not a whole lot more I could say. I've been gushing over him for a couple of weeks, waiting for tonight, so we could have a proper. But Chris is the right person for the job at the right time, and I can't be happier that he's joining this team because he's a perfect fit for the fire department, for the department head group, for the entire community. Listen, I said I couldn't say enough, and I can't shut up. You won't find anybody that doesn't agree with me.
Appreciate that. There were definitely a lot of letters of support in the packet that we received that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that as well.
Your background. And I did also speak with one of the members of the interview committee that Tom had, and also had nothing but good things to say, especially about the experienced answers that you provided. Good news.
An exciting process.
It's a win-win for this town. We
Thank you.
appreciate your dedication.
Absolutely.
And then just for the public's benefit, in terms of this process, the charter, this is one of the few positions that the council has veto authority over, whereas all other employment decisions are just the sole authority of the town manager, which is why this is before us this evening. So with this point, unless there's any further comments or questions, it's up to the council to accept the appointment and waive any veto period.
So I'd like to make a motion to accept the appointment of Deputy Fire Chief Christopher Beecher as the town of East Long Meadow's new fire chief and waive the town council's remaining veto period.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Sure.
Oh, I thought you were calling for.
No, this one.
Do we do a roll call with Marilyn not here or?
Yeah, we can do a roll call for safety. So Jim.
Safety.
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
I am a yes. Marilyn is absent. Ralph.
Yes.
I am a yes.
And John. Great. Congratulations.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I look forward to working with you.
Congratulations.
Thank you for waiting.
I know, sorry it took so long.
Thank you.
Hope it was worth it.
Can we have a photo with the council? Certainly.
Please.
Sure.
You want to stand where Marilyn was?
Oh, wow, behind the table.
Sorry. It's awesome. I tell you, I couldn't be happier.
Good place to stay.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
I'll send this to Paul.
Gosh, good job. I see you got brother.
No, it's not worth it. Ellie's going on. You got 3 kids in the middle of Miami or no?
Thanks for hanging.
Yes.
Way back, yes.
So we already did the joint meeting with the planning board. So our next item was to appoint the bylaw review committee members.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Guys.
So if you recall at our December meeting, the town, I had drafted a bylaw review committee bylaw. That's not confusing. That would set up the process that the council would undertake for the annual, or the 10-year review that the charter mandates for the town to review all town bylaws, including zoning. And we passed that. So then it was accepting applicants to actually serve on that committee so that we could get started on that. I only received 2 people from the public. Those were attached in the packet that you saw. It was fortunate that there weren't as many people interested in that to apply. That said,
Connor is one.
second, we were able to get a full committee of the full
I
7.
don't know if one of them is here.
If there was anyone that was,
Yeah.
I don't know. But the members of the committee, so there will be a full 7. We have Timothy Manning, who has lived in town for 10 or more years. We have Mark Manalakis.
Oh.
All right. Congrats, Mark.
Yeah, congrats. He said he lived in town for 5 years now and also served previously on the finance committee in Wilbraham. So it was an interesting experience. We have Rich Ficero, who had served on many town board committees, in the school committee. Ralph Page as a town councilor, Jim as a town councilor.
Nice.
Brian Quimby is the town's IT director, which will also provide a town employee to give that perspective. And then George Kingston is a former planning board member.
The committee.
Many, also many,
So through the chair.
Awesome.
Will we be having someone appointed, an employee that will be able to take and
Out of direction out of you tonight. Out of direction.
So typically in the past, under like the charter review, we always had someone. Did you do e-code?
I did.
Poor girl.
Get it up. Get it up.
Did the bylaw review.
If there's a possibility of it, because when we get into the zoning and all, there's going to be a lot of information and a lot of work. This is one big book and we got to go through it line by line.
Yeah.
So again, it's just a
I don't know what the
suggestion.
answer is, but I'm sure Tom and I can talk about that.
Yeah, great. No, I think
Sum it up. So just add that. Anna,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Yes.
I sort of let the department heads know that like there'd probably be some input from them. So if
Yes.
however you guys decide to get down, we'll just make sure we can all schedule some time to.
And I did ask Jamie before the meeting started, and hopefully we'll be able to coordinate LCAT recording it as well. So
I still think that Zoom, I think I can get a transcription.
AI Zoom
I think we
done.
can try this. Right?
Oh,
I think so.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right?
look at that. Yeah,
And you got Quimby in the group, so
Yeah.
you can try it.
Yes.
I think Zoom transcribes these.
I think you're right, Jamie.
So
Okay.
Jackie's like, why am I here?
She's like, what?
Job security.
But that said, I'll reach out to all the committee members over the next couple days so we can try to get the next kickoff meeting. It'll just be a short one to have introductions, try to set the task of the committee is, so we're all on the same page. There. As far as chair though, I'll leave that up to the committee to decide how they want to do that, if they want to.
Congratulations, Jim.
I saw what you did earlier tonight. You did this to yourself.
You've got the good book. How are you going to give that away?
Yeah, leave a good book around and.
You're like Moses
Yes.
with.
So that said, action items for our next meeting. Not our next meeting, but I know it's the Heroes Act in March.
Oh,
We
right.
have,
We're chatting about that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we're on it.
Okay.
But we'll do March also, obviously.
absolutely. I'm sure
I
I
have-
have stuff that I'm missing, but I can't think of it off the.
I have a ballot.
Committee meeting with us again.
Oh, yes,
giving us
the school
that
committee is-
financial Update.
Yep. They'll be meeting at our next meeting to have another joint meeting with us.
Okay.
I'm sure there's more and I'll
That's okay.
share it when I remember.
I missed the ADU.
Yeah.
Well,
Ballot language.
Oh,
Jesse.
yes.
All right.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 9:26.
Congratulations. I believe